Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, everyone. It's so great to have you all on one more time. It's boy Josh.
And Reg, and I'm actually here.
We're grateful to be back on with you one more time for Debate Night, baby. We are very excited to see how this one goes down because now we won't have to deal with the translator and the weird voices that they gave each candidate and actually hear from them directly, which will be fun to actually hear the confidence in Poilievre's voice and the uncertainty in Carney's. So it'll be fascinating to kind of watch and see how Jagmeet decides to go lie again tonight, and we'll see what Blanchette does. As in Blanchette's direct words, this should be quite a party. Reg, how you feeling, big dog?
I'm feeling good. I apologize to everybody. I was supposed to be here last night. I ended up meeting with a couple folks in the healthcare space from out west, actually, an individual who was working in the Yukon and then ended up working in Alberta, and it was really a really good conversation. The problem was that my phone died, which had my alarm to let me know to come to the show and see all you folks. And I had no way to tell Josh. I was like, I'm going to be late. And turned out it was like the date was long over. And I was like, crap. Yeah. I owe all of you a big apology. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good, man. We are, we're about half hour out from the English debate tonight, and figured it might be interesting to kind of get your perspective as you kind of watched it afterwards and got your feedback. We talked a little bit afterwards, but what was your take on what you saw happen last night?
So Jagmeet was the most annoying part of that debate, honestly, just not adding any value, and was just kind of like yapping at every leader, which was the most annoying part, I think. The second most annoying part, I think, was Poilievre being cut off every time he tried to speak. So they'd be like, Mr. Poilievre, what do you think of this? And he'd start into talking about it. And then they'd be like, oh, next. And then they almost always go to Jagmeet, like almost always. And I was like, what does this guy have over you folks? And he's just like keeping him on the... Anyway, so that was the second most annoying thing. The third most annoying thing was Blanchette every 2 seconds being like, well, if this is good for Quebec, maybe, but not good for Canada, oh well. And it was just like, how are you in a federal leaders debate when you have no desire to be prime minister of this country? It's like, we already have a provincial government of Quebec. Sorry, you're not it. Like, get out of here. Like, I found that really annoying.
Yeah, it was fun explaining it to my American in-laws who are in town currently. And they're like, oh yeah, how'd the debates go last night? Who was on it? And I kind of explained exactly what you said. And there's like, so wait, there's someone on the stage who isn't running for prime minister. I was like, correct. And why is he there? That's what we're all wondering.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Did you say, it would be like if the governor of California decided that they didn't want to be president of the United States, but we're going to debate, Trump and Kamala at the same time.
Yeah.
So, and it's stupid.
Well, it was like the stupidity of it all was more so when they got to the questions of like, okay, as prime minister, what would you do in a negotiation with Donald Trump? And it comes to Blanchette. Oh, well, Carney does this and Poilievre does that. I think I prefer Poilievre. Like it was just weird. It's like as if I was up there and adding my 2 cents. So I'm not going to be PM. I'm not adding anything to the conversation, but I'm going to just give my perspective on each of these guys.
Yeah. The other part that I thought that was really annoying about that too was just the fact that he kept saying again that, that rhetoric of, oh, well, the United States aren't going to do anything that's in their, against their interest. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that Donald Trump is doing things that right now that are not in the interest of the United States right now in the interim, maybe in the long term, but he's doing some wild things down there. And a lot of people are very unhappy with him. So I don't think I would rely on that argument one iota. But he's like, no, never going to happen. They were talking specifically about pipelines, and they said, is Quebec going to allow for a pipeline? Right now, you pipe all of your OPEC-based oil from the States up into Quebec, or you get the pipeline that goes through Minnesota and up into Ontario that goes into Quebec. What happens if Donald Trump stops that flow of oil and you're out of luck because all of your homes are now freezing in the middle of February? He's like, not going to happen. It won't.
I couldn't believe he said that.
Like, what?
My jaw dropped. And I was like, you've seen everything that you've seen over the past 4 years specifically, and that's going to be your answer? Oh, Donald Trump won't do that. Yeah, he would. If you pushed him enough, and we're talking about war scenarios, so that's what's Carney keeps pushing that rhetoric.
Yeah.
Trump might just do it. I'm like, okay, well, here we go. You've pushed me. You pushed us far enough. Boom. We're going to cut the oil. And that was the argument for not putting pipelines through Quebec.
Yeah.
That was the argument. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And the other part of it too that I found really annoying, I found the most annoyance around topics of energy as it intersected with environment and as it intersected with economy. Because basically they used the argument, they said, oh, the climate crisis, and it's very upsetting that we had all these forest fires in Alberta and in BC and in Quebec. And it's like, well, for one, Quebec's forest fires were lit by individuals who are climate zealots and who thought that this was going to be the way that they were going to bring attention to climate change. And they found that out in the courts.
Yep.
It's a known case. And so I hated that they brought that up and tried to morph that into the climate argument. Then also when you talk about Alberta and the fact that the federal government has gutted the systems that actually manage forestry properly and stopped the cutting and the removal of dead wood and just good national park management. And then what happens? The things that the indigenous people, the things that the locals have been saying for years now, you got to do something about this. There's a lot of dead wood on the ground. There's a lot of, dead standing that needs to be cut down. We need to manage these forests the way that they should be managed. Almost like somebody with a resource and environmental management background has been saying now. And they're like, nope, climate change. That's what it is. I was like, and so then that was their argument for not having a pipeline go across the country. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, really?
I think the one thing that really took me aback the most was it wasn't the debate that took the stage last night. It was the questions that came afterwards.
Oh, yes.
Dude, independent media lit it up.
Yeah.
And the MSM, not very happy about it.
Oh, they were pissed.
They were annoyed. And it's like, yeah, well, you've been ignoring us forever. You've been denigrating all of us forever, gaslighting us forever. And now the independent media finally gets a say, gets to ask a couple questions. And now it's like, how dare they? That's not allowed. That shouldn't be allowed. Why do they get questions? That's because you're not asking the ones that we want to hear answered. The debate didn't cover it last night. So they figured, you know what? People are asking these questions. We'll ask them.
Yeah.
That's what media is supposed to do, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, it was exactly what you covered in your video this afternoon. To me, it ranks so much of the who dares the communists into court. You know what I mean? It was just this, we're so much above them. We're so knowledgeable and we have all these papers across the wall. And as somebody who has a lot of paper on the wall, to be quite honest, it's not all it's cracked up to be. Anybody can do this work if you have a sharp mind and you're inquisitive and honest and have questions that you want to have answered that are brought to you by the Canadian people. And that's the thing that they're not realizing is that they may represent a view of a certain group of the population, but they're not doing a good job representing the entire population. And when they're in a state-funded media scenario where they're supposed to represent the views of all Canadians because they're collecting taxes from all Canadians and benefiting off that tax revenue, they should be featuring questions like, do you think that we should be supporting Christians whose churches are being burnt down right now in retaliation to rhetoric that has been put out there? Do you think that, it's wild that the Chinese have had so much foreign influence into the Canadian politics scene? Do you think that it's interesting that we're still fighting over whether or not there's two genders or if there's multiple genders or what have you? And the fact that Carney, when he answered that too, I thought was really funny. He says, on the topic of sex, there's two. Yes. So you didn't answer the question. Cool. And I love that the reporter actually at the end of it was just like, whatever, we're not going to touch that.
Yeah. Well, and that was one thing about it was I felt this meme was posted and the meme was Mark Carney yesterday during the French debate.
How many genders are there?
I don't know. I just got here.
How many
That's amazing.
I was like, that perfectly encapsulated last night.
I actually have to hand it to Carney. I thought he did well at like holding his own in that French debate, especially given his challenges with the French language. I would say that I thought that he did a good job for the capacity that he had. He definitely had Jagmeet Singh running the show as the crazy wild card there that was just making a mess and running amok. So,
well, I'm curious from your perspective. So you listen just the translated version.
Yeah.
Because I'm hearing a different story from those who only watch the French version.
oh, okay.
Is like for those in Quebec, they said, no, the translation covered his flaws.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of what I understood from what I'm hearing, at least those out of Quebec. So I don't know. I know the French language enough, but not enough to be like, okay, was that bad? Was that like, did that get across to the French population? So, but again, that's just kind of what I'm seeing. I'm not saying that's what the general population's feeling. So curious.
So I have Carney level French, which is hilarious considering I was born and raised in the bilingual province of Canada.
Yeah.
But that province, as many people who know who are from New Brunswick, as I saw there was a couple of people in the chat, so shout out to you folks. That province is split almost on a diagonal where you've got the English right here and you got the French over here, and they don't like to mix. Because just the way it is. And so listening to that debate, I was only listening to the translated version, and you were right. The voices were hilarious. I was like, what did they? And then that one lady voice that kept coming on for Jagmeet Singh. I was just like, no shade against anybody who, does the translation, male or female, but I just thought it was funny that they wouldn't match up the genders of the voices to the genders of the people on the stage. And then, of course, it was Jagmeet Singh that was getting her voice for some reason.
Well, that's the thing that made me laugh was that I felt like they did a decent job matching up the voice to the person. Like Cardi's translator sounded kind of like him, not gonna lie. And then Poliez was kind of like whatever. It was a person. Blanchette kind of matched him. But then out of nowhere, Jagmeet's just like, hi guys. Like it just added to the comedic value of the fact of him sounding like a chihuahua out there. Like it just added everything to it of him sounding whiny, complainy. Why you here? You're not serving any value. It just added to that whole thing, and just to the point you just had to laugh at him because it was hilarious to listen to it back.
Anyway, yeah, I thought it was an interesting choice.
You know what? That's what it felt like. I was watching an anime when that voice came on. It felt like I was watching an anime. That's exactly what it felt.
Oh man. Yeah. So some of the other things too that kind of annoyed me, they spent so much time on the Trump thing, which we knew was going to come out because that's the way CBC is playing it right now. So I just was like, why are you spending so much time on this when you have a kind of a wild card leader, I'll say, for the states who is like, maybe the Trump tariffs are on, maybe they're off, and then you've got China over there like 100%,
No
take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Here it is. And everybody's just like, okay. Like, what?
That's all right with us.
Yeah.
Only because it affects certain pockets. It doesn't impact Ontario.
Yeah. Ontario and Quebec are fine from that, right?
Yeah.
So, but BC and Nova Scotia, New Brunswick and Newfoundland, you can go, past and
Saskatchewan too.
Yeah, Saskatchewan as well.
Yeah.
But,
Pretty much,
but not
all the other provinces.
Yeah.
But Quebec and Ontario.
Yeah, but not Quebec and Ontario.
Yeah.
And it's funny because
It's crazy.
Yeah. So you look at it and you're just like, okay, so obviously this was designed for Quebec and Ontario, and you wonder why there's a unity crisis. Because the issues that are happening on the periphery, the fentanyl crisis that's ravaging BC, the affordability crisis that's hitting places like New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, that never was a problem of affordability, that we have tent cities now that we never had. So these kind of things that are just not being discussed because it's more important to talk about the sovereignty and the language issues. But granted, I get it. They did their French language debate in Quebec. That's of course what they're going to talk about. But it was really, really frustrating to see that we have one debate for Quebec and then we have another debate for the rest of the country.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't like that.
In parts of
Sucks. Yeah, and parts of New Brunswick. Which, funny enough, growing up in New Brunswick, the French parts of New Brunswick, very welcoming of the Québécois. The Québécois hate the Acadiens. They're just like, nope, their French sucks. We don't like it. They sound like backwater. They're losers, whatever. And then you have the Parisians in French who are just like, oh, the Québécois, they're backwater. It's just like this weird, like,
class thing.
I crap on you, you crap on me, and then it's all merit at the end of the day. But
it's funny. It's I think going back to the whole reporter issue, So, as we know, the mainstream media was crying about it all day today. So much so that they managed to get CBC managed to get the executive director of the Debates Commission, Michael Cormier, on with them in a 7-minute segment. We'll only watch the first 3.5 because it's a very, very interesting back and forth. And just seeing essentially David Cochrane calling Rebel News they sound like petulant children. But David Cochrane sound like a petulant child crying to the executive director. So here I sped it up a bit just for the sake of time, and because they mumble a lot. So we just want to get through this.
This was the controversy before the debate.
Yes.
There was a controversy after the debate.
Yeah.
What did you think of what we saw in the question and answer session?
Well, just to tell you, we tried to actually, we denied accreditation to Rebel Media both in 2019 and 2021 because we didn't consider them to be actually to do professional journalism.
Right.
But they went to court and we lost the 2 injunctions and we had to let them in. So this time we decided we could not risk another defeat in court with the precedents that were out there. We couldn't win. So we accredited a number of Rebel Media, and they went to the microphones and asked questions. They put themselves, I guess,
How dare
strategically
they?
do that.
Crazy,
And,
crazy idea.
But you gave, so it may be inside baseball, so people at home understand. Each media organization that was accredited was told they were going to get 1 pass to ask a question.
Yeah.
Rebel was given 5 because through whatever reasoning, they'd convince you that they have a bunch of divisions that qualify for admission, and they were given 5 passes. And then after
What
the
a
fact,
baby.
other media organizations were told they could have up to 5 questions.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah. How is it you've let Rebel set the standard there on the number of questions? Like, you can let them all in. I understand you have the court precedent working against you there, but 1 question per organization, like the CBC, we could argue we have a bunch of divisions provincially, and the Sun Media could argue the same thing. But we were all initially told 1, and then you gave Rebel 5, and somehow they became the standard for everybody else.
Well, it's because we were afraid that we would lose that battle in court. And the last time we lost that battle, we had to accredit 11 Rebel reporters. So we thought with 5, it's a number we can live with.
Okay, so I know the past precedents, but like this is a filing with Elections Canada from this election where Rebel News has filed as a third-party advertising group. They are raising money in their own documents for partisan political activities. That's not what a journalistic organization does, right? So I appreciate that you've lost in the past, but if they are raising money to run ads to influence the outcome of an election, surely a judge would look at that and say, this isn't a journalistic organization.
Gasp.
Perhaps we didn't get there.
But why not? Like, I understand you lost before. This is a material change in their conduct. They have this truck going around with a
This is the best part. This is the best part.
Promoting conspiracy theories and allegations.
Conspiracy
mostly
theories.
Against Mark
Look at
Carney,
these messages.
Like, we're showing it there. And so you can see this on the screen. That is one of the few things we can show on TV that appears on the side of that. I mean, this looks like evidence in a court battle. I mean, you are entrusted with this authority. Why not?
Well,
I'm waiting for the lie.
Showed them in the last lawsuit doing an political advocacy.
Okay, maybe that one.
And it did
Yeah,
not
that
convince
one
the
is.
judge. So
I can't make out that
for
one.
us, this agreement, this argument
exposed.
was not going to be more effective this time.
You argued that they were raising money as a third-party advertiser.
Saying that they were
last
doing
time.
advocacy against political candidates.
But registering
The same
as a third party in an election campaign is an official step to become an actor in that election campaign that goes well beyond the world of journalism, right?
Well, I wasn't aware of that.
Well, I mean, journalists have found this. I mean, the commission has staff, right? The commission, like, I just wonder how you could not be aware of this, or why you weren't aware of this. You have a legal team. Like, were you advised not to fight it, or did you just decide not to fight it?
Oh my God.
No, we were advised that we couldn't win that case.
Right,
we went to court.
but you didn't have, like, do you
We
think,
did
would
not-
this have changed your thought process, I wonder?
Perhaps we had to analyze it. I just I learned about this today.
So we had issues last time.
Okay,
So-
I was gonna say I'm done.
You done listening to the people? You done to this conversation? Well, here's the thing. This is where it gets interesting. So clearly, David Cochrane put the pressure on him here. Says, "Come on, man, what are you doing? Wah, baby. Well, Mr. Ezra Levant from Rebel Media posted this today, saying, breaking debates chief Michael Cormier tells CTV News that he intends to limit the participation of independent journalists by changing the rules yet again. He explicitly said he will keep his proposed changes secret until the last possible moment. So that's what we can be looking forward to tonight. And that is, my friends, the dirty games that are being played.
Because, you know, the key to journalistic integrity is to hide the rules, make it difficult for our dissenting voices to enter the ring, and control the narrative. That is journalistic integrity at its finest, right there. Yep. Love to see that for Canada.
That's how it goes, man. And that's kind of been the battle and the frustration that a lot of people are feeling. And the chat feeling all the same.
I want to read out one of these chats.
Yeah, go for it.
It says, Rosemary Barton needs to look inside herself. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, that's true. It was actually wild to see them kind of complain and cry about this, and it was what it was.
Yeah, it just painful. It was painful to watch, honestly. Watching him just like you said, act like a petulant child. Exactly right.
Well, like here's the thing: is I know a lot of the mainstream media don't like us in general, because we make them look bad for their inadequacies as journalists who went to school for all these years, and it does blow me away that someone like, I hate to keep bringing it up, but I just want to make the example, is that someone like Rachel Gilmore, who's been studying this stuff for a long, long, long time. How does someone who studied user experience design, been doing that for 10 years, 4 years studying it, 10 years in the industry, come in within a year and take her over and like smoke her in numbers? Oh, because you stink at your job.
That's the thing, right? I mean, my background, business, environment, sustainability, evaluation, change management, project management, not journalism. But the thing is that the thing about journalism, it's just about asking the right questions. And that's why I think this whole like need to have a journalistic background, I think it's BS. Because as a designer, you have to understand the intensity, context, the ideas, the situation, and then the feelings and outcomes that the people are going to get when they see your design. So I think a designer is completely appropriate. For me, change management, project management, and evaluation, that's all you're doing when you're looking at some of these items and you're saying, you know, how is this going to affect people? What is the change going to be? How are they going to actually measure this was successful? So I think we make a good pair, honestly. And I think that the people who have only got their journalistic degrees where they look at, you know, the right way to maybe get a gotcha moment in there, I don't know what they take. And I don't want to devalue people's hard work because I know that any kind of education you get is going to be a lot of work. But I just don't think that it's a sacred cow that needs to be so glorified and put on a pedestal, just the same way that when I look at people's degrees and I look at my own degrees, I'm like, that's not really what makes the person. And so that's why I get so upset too when they look at the resumes of Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. I think it's a lot more work to spend 20 odd years in a public service fighting your way to the top than it is to be given a handout of a position over here, and then because you've got connections over here to be moved into this nice cushy seat over there and rule from on high. I think that that is a lot easier, looks fancy on paper, but a lot easier than actually working your way from the bottom to get to the top. So,
look, I just got here. That was the funniest part of that for me last night. That and the Harry Potter economics here.
Oh my god,
that was good. But yeah, we are about. Looks like the leaders are getting ready here. Probably about we're about 5 minutes away, maybe less. That they're going to get started. Finally, we're going to start. Nice to start on time, which is great. We love to see things starting on time. But the last thing was the point I was actually going to make with that initially was I know in the media that they explain how they really don't like us. However, every event I've been to and I've had to work with the mainstream media, they've been really nice to me.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be honest. I've actually not had a direct interaction with someone in the media who's like, no, I hate you. It's been like, no, dude, like, I'll be honest. Yeah, we do different things, but you guys are smoking us in views. Like, I had someone from the mainstream media literally tell me that, like, good job, even though it looks different, which I appreciated.
And that's what I think it is. It's not so much the people on the ground, and that's why I keep saying, you know, you don't look at the top, you look at the people on the ground, the grassroots. I think the average journalist, the average cameraman, the people who are actually getting the story out there, who want to get the story out there in a good, integral way, I don't think they're the problem. I think it's the editors up top who are being paid a lot of money to spin something the right way, to change the title, to put something out front, put something behind a paywall, hide something, not hide something. Those are the ones that I think that are causing the problem, because I don't think the problem is our journalists.
Totally. I'm going to read this super chat before we get started here. Matt24 says, glad to be watching with you. Hope to see you on the ball field this year, Josh. Yeah, dude. That was a fun story. I never tell you that story. But thank you, Matt. I was playing ball one day and this guy's like, hey, I think I watched your show. I was like, there you go. Kevin Taylor coming in hot before we start. Says, convince me to switch my vote from PPC. My main issues are Maxime was 100% on point with COVID tyranny. Pierre hasn't mentioned Tamara or Chris facing jail. Pierre seems to want war with Trump. I'll leave that to you.
All right, so give me the hard one. Basically, my convincing for Pierre Poilievre is that I think that Maxime Bernier has actually done a really good job of convincing people that Poilievre and Carney are the same, which is really unfortunate because it's actually not the case at all. And when you actually read through some of the policies on immigration, some of the policies on freedom of speech, some of the policies on freedom of mobility and income earning potential and reducing government's burden, I think that when you look at all that, you have to say, okay, is this what I'm going to get behind? And one of the things that we actually talked about when we had Rob on here, who is a reformed PPCer, now turned conservative supporter, is the fact that when you want to change a system, you have to work within it. You know, kind of screaming from the outside and hoping that that's going to affect something isn't really how you create change. So if you're going to look at the PPC and say, that's where I want to throw my vote, unfortunately, that's diluting the vote share for the Conservatives. And that's really where you need to be in, is that, you know, bring the Conservatives a little farther right if you want that. So they have processes right now where you can actually propose policy and that get voted on, that get deliberated, that get considered from the Conservative side. And there's a lot more pressure to bring those folks who are a little bit farther right back into the fold so that you have a more classically conservative party. And I think that that's the way to do it. You know, bring people together. Don't create these subdivided little entities off to the side, because what you do is you dilute your power. And right now, by diluting the vote, diluting your power, you basically ensure that you have a government like Carney who gets in, who puts restrictions on free speech, taxes you to death, spends out the wazoo. Before tonight, I was actually preparing a bit of a slide on just the comparison of the policies, and I didn't get it finished in time. But I was just looking at the slew of money that was going to be spent by the federal liberals, and I was like, how are they ever going to pay that back? They don't have any plan to. They're all too old. They don't care. They're saying we're going to be long dead by the time that the third, fourth generation Canadians are going to have to pay this back.
Yeah.
So I look at this and I say, I understand and I hear where you're coming from, where you don't feel like your voice is representing the Conservative Party. That doesn't mean that you stand outside of it. It means you go actually in deeper and you work with those folks, you talk to them, you have those conversations, and you be a unifier and change policy in that direction.
Yeah. And I'll leave it at that, because Reg was a lot more thoughtful in his response than I would be. So we're going to leave that at that.
As I eat my strawberries.
Oh, so I got
I requested.
Yeah, Reg requested strawberries for tonight as we were watching. And here's the thing. I made sure to go to the grocery store myself. I looked and I saw, oh man, there is strawberries. Product of the USA. Don't know if I can buy those. $2.50. I can definitely buy those. And I made sure to buy them myself, unlike Malconey.
Yeah. I think I said to you, make sure you're buying the American strawberries.
Just to tick everybody off.
Just to be ridiculous and be just stupid.
Eric A., not to be mixed up with Erica, says, Rachel Gilmore's channel is nothing but a gossip channel. Nothing more. She's too biased, and her reporting, quote unquote, is more of a smear campaign. And yeah, can't disagree with that.
Yeah, I've had to stop following Rachel Gilmore on any kind of social media platform at all, just because I'm like, oh, you just annoy the crap out of me.
Oh, no.
But I did happen to see when she got the job as the fact checker and then quickly lost that job as the fact checker. So what does that tell you?
Yeah, well, we're here. We're getting started here, folks. Let's have some fun, shall we?
Stay on theme, stay on time. How much each leader speaks will be counted on these clocks, visible to the leaders and to you at home. This is the 2025 Federal Leaders Debate. Well, welcome, leaders. Good to be with you here tonight in Montreal for what I'm sure will be a memorable evening. Our first theme is tariffs and threats to Canada. And
of course.
We will begin with a round of questions. You will each have a minute to answer, and then we'll go to open debate. And the first question goes to Mr. Carney. Okay, what is the starting point for negotiations, Mr. Carney, with the United States if, as you have stated, our relationship with the U.S. is over as we know it?
Well, first, Steve, may I thank you and also thank fellow leaders for their service to Canada.
Why are you looking
people
to the
at home
right?
for taking the time to
Oh,
watch.
wait, he's in the middle. Never mind.
I just want to underscore the premise to your question, because I think the relationship that we've had with the United States, relationship over the course of almost the last 4 decades, which has been one of steady and increasing integration, has fundamentally changed, because the president is looking to fundamentally restructure the trading system. So the starting point has to be one of strength. It has to show that we have control of our own economic destiny, has to have a clear plan here at home to build this economy, to diversify our trading partners with like-minded countries, and also has to have a position of strength in terms of our reaction to the U.S. unjustified tariffs. And that's why we have put in place counter tariffs that have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here at home.
Mr. Poilievre, would you do anything differently?
Well, first of all, thank you, Steve, and thank you to our fellow contestants here today. It's an honor to be here. What would I do different? Well, I'll start by what I would do the same. I think we do need to counter the American tariffs with our own to deter this economic aggression. We must make clear that we will always be sovereign and independent. What would I be doing differently? Well, we need to be in a position of strength. The Liberal government has weakened our economy with anti-energy laws, red tape, and high taxes that have driven $500 billion out of our country into the United States and made us incapable of shipping our resources overseas. That weakness threatens our ability to stand up for ourselves. So what would I do? I would cut taxes, red tape, and approve our resource projects so that we can get our goods to market and bring home the jobs, so we stand up to President Trump from a position of strength.
Mr. Singh, you get the next question. Can we trust the United States to work with us on matters such as...
You want to hear what he's going to do for...
No. But basically, what I think of that, I'm like, no, you go down, you say, we recognize that we value the partnership between Canada and America, and we say that we've had this many years of, good relationships. We don't want to throw that away. So we'll negotiate with the U.S. so that we both win out of this. Like, no, stand up to Trump. I hate that so much.
Yeah. It's just like that whole messaging of like, will we win over the middle? Like that's where that reeks of, instead of just standing on like, hey, there's a better way to deal with this, a la Danielle Smith.
And so Canadians now are right to say, well, we don't really trust Donald Trump at this point, and we can't really have a lot of faith in him. So when it comes to our Arctic sovereignty and our security, we need to make decisions that are in our best interest and no longer be so dependent and so reliant on the U.S. And that's what I would advocate for, making sure we are resilient, independent, and less dependent on the United States.
Monsieur Blanchet, for you, what supports would you want to see for industries affected by tariffs?
Yeah, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, Blanchet?
Many of them. First, be all welcome in Quebec and Montreal. You have me, because I try not to speak English in Montreal. However, I think we should never underestimate the threat that Mr. Trump poses on Quebec economy and Canada economy and Mexico economy. But we must acknowledge the fact that the economy of Quebec is built differently. The challenges are not the same. The necessity for Quebec to have at least partly its own voice in the negotiation is important. The difference between Quebec and Canada is very important in terms of economy, but also in terms of identity and language and values and who we are and the way we want to handle immigration. So we have the right to be different, and if this difference is being respected by whoever becomes Prime Minister of Canada, we will be reliable partners in order to achieve the best possible negotiation and protect ourselves and our economies as
we get Danielle Smith on stage at this point.
Yeah, that was the longest way to say nothing.
We now move into open debate, and I'll start it off, Mr. Carney, with you, and
here we go.
We go from there. Do you still support dollar-for-dollar tariffs, even if they ultimately threaten Canadian jobs and businesses?
No, and in fact, we've already moved off from dollar-for-dollar tariffs.
After the Honda situation.
We have to recognize, and I think we all do, the United States economy is more than 10 times the size of the Canadian economy. And the principle in terms of our counter tariffs is to have maximum impact in the United States, as I said a moment ago, minimum impact here. So we have to think about the impact on Canadian businesses. I'll give you one example, if I may. In the auto sector, the way we've designed those auto tariffs is that Canadian automakers, if they maintain production here, if they maintain their investments here, when I say Canadian automakers, I mean automakers that have jobs and plants and production in Canada.
I'll specify that.
Then they can have lower tariffs on what they ship to the United States. We create a huge incentive for them in order to do that. We also have carved out the Canadian auto parts sector. Last point, I know you're pressed for time. The Canadian auto parts sector so that it can remain competitive with the United States. We're focused on maximizing Canadian jobs, maximizing the harm in the U.S. So that we get them where we need them.
Mr. Poilievre, you want in, then Mr. Singh.
Well, Mr. Carney, you claim that you want our country to respond with strength, but after the last decade, half of which time you've been Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, our economy is weaker than ever before. It's been the worst growth in the G7. We've lost $500 billion of investment south of the border. You supported blocking pipelines in Canada that gave Donald Trump and the U.S. a near monopoly over our energy. And now you want to keep in place Bill C-69, the liberal no new development law that blocks us from shipping our resources overseas. How could you possibly think it's a good idea to give the Americans a continued monopoly on our energy projects when you have seen how much these liberal policies have weakened our country over the last decade?
Let Mr. Carney respond, and then Mr. Singh.
Sure. If I may, yes. So let's go to my record. My record is a month long as Prime Minister. And this goes to the heart of coming to the Americans.
I just got here, guys.
Doing the right thing for Canada. Within the first week as Prime Minister, I sat down with all the premiers of the provinces and territories, as well as the leaders of the Indigenous peoples. Got an agreement with all the provinces and territories, doesn't happen very often, got an agreement for them to have one Canadian economy instead of 13. First point.
There it is.
Secondly, to commit the federal government to do its part by Canada Day. So free trade in Canada by Canada Day. Thirdly, the federal government to commit with respect to project reviews.
The question was about pipelines.
I'm getting to it. Thirdly,
it wasn't,
one project, one review, and relying
That's
on provincial. Yes, it is possible under our system.
No,
it is
not.
the
It's
impact
banned
assessment.
under C-69.
It is agreed on under the impact assessment framework, and we have a cooperation agreement with British Columbia already. We're looking forward to them with the other provinces. We will move forward.
Got to let Mr. Singh's turn, please.
Of course, we agree around having a strategic response to the United States.
So why I sighed when Poilievre was talking. We were talking about the auto sector. We were talking about automakers, auto parts. That's a big vote share in Ontario. And he immediately turned it over to pipelines and energy.
Which that's going to come later in the night. Which
exactly.
Like that was an opportunity to really hit hard on the Honda issue, hit hard what's going on with that relationship with the states over the, like it was just a great opportunity that he missed, I feel like there.
It was a complete miss. And I think that what happens is that the middle of the road voter, the undecided, the moderate, if you will, is going to hear that and go, why is he just throwing at the same rhetoric again? We've already heard this, and like answer the question. So I actually felt that he didn't answer the question there.
Yeah. I'm wondering, what am I going to do if I lose my job? Workers who've lost their job are saying, how do I pay my bills when EI only covers half of a worker's salary? Maybe 40 years ago that would have worked, but right now most workers are spending their entire salary just to pay the bills, to pay their mortgage and their rent, and to put food on the table. So EI is not good enough, and it shows Canadians that you didn't make it a priority to protect those that are impacted by these tariffs.
I do want to hear what Carney has to say
because their jobs are lost.
We have not heard from Monsieur Blanchet yet in this.
We don't want to hear from him.
Yeah, Mr. Carney, you are becoming a real Canadian leader, saying one thing in French and another one in English. You said in British Columbia in February that you would force oil and gas through pipelines through Quebec, either we wanted it or not. You would use emergency powers in order to do so. And 2 days later in Montreal, you said that you would never do that without the approval of Quebec. What's the point of using emergency powers if you do have the agreement of Quebec? However, I do agree with you. It's important to be very strong in front of Mr. Trump. However, I would keep the dollar for dollar policy. Don't be weak in front of Mr. Trump. And those counter tariffs have to be targeted. You have put out already $2 billion for Ontario auto industry, car industry, and the lumberwood industry in Quebec has already paid to United States $2 billion, and you have not raised one finger in order to help us.
Let's get from Mr. Poilievre and then a response from Mr. Carney.
Well, Mr. Carney refused to answer the question about pipelines. Just the other day, he said that he doesn't necessarily think we need to build pipelines. Let me tell you what that means. Right now, the Americans get 97% of our oil, 100% of our natural gas exports at big discounts. We have to send Canadian oil from Western Canada through the States just to get it back to Quebec because we don't have a pipeline. And now there's this law, Liberal Law C-69, which effectively bans pipelines. The 14 biggest energy and resource companies say it has to go if we're ever going to build another project. And I asked Mr. Carney why he would keep in place this anti-pipeline law that effectively empowers Donald Trump to have a total monopoly on our single biggest export. Why would you not repeal this Liberal law? Isn't it because you are exactly the same in the same line as Justin Trudeau and the rest of the Liberal team that is now making up your cabinet?
Let's get a response.
Well, let me pick up a couple of points that have been made. The first thing I did as Prime Minister was to cut the carbon tax. That's the first thing. Second thing is made a commitment that all proceeds from our tariffs will go to workers and those companies most affected. There were several points raised.
Nothing so far.
If I may, Mr. Steve, if I may address, I'm trying to do it quickly because several points raised. All proceeds go to workers and the firms most effective, and those proceeds are considerable. Third thing, I'm interested in solutions. I'm interested in getting energy infrastructure built. That means pipelines, that means carbon capture, storage, that means electricity grids. And here's how you do it. And we've already moved in the first month. Cooperation agreements with the provinces. Guess what? We are a federation. You need to cooperate with Quebec. You need to cooperate with the provinces. You need to get First Nations and Indigenous people buy-in. You can do that through the one project, one review window that we put in place at that first ministers' meeting, as well as, if necessary, using emergency powers to fulfill the federal responsibility, but not the unique.
Mr. Poilievre, you want to come back on that?
What you're saying, Mr. Carney, with respect, is a total contradiction. The No New Development Law, C-69, guarantees there will not be one-stop shop because it requires the Government of Canada to actually duplicate
Mr. Poilievre is saying is that have no rules,
project.
have no regulation,
have one
have no controls
over
any energy.
We just got to let him finish his sentence. Let's just let him finish his sentence.
Well, that is not true. In fact, Mr. Singh, the reality is we should have strong rules enforced once. We shouldn't have multiple levels of referral that it takes now 17 years to get a major project approved in this country. That is why in the last 10 years we've had the worst economic growth in the entire G7. We cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a change, and the Conservative plan for a change will include repealing the anti-pipeline law so we can get our energy to markets other than the United States.
Mr. Singh, then Mr. Carney.
While these two compete about who's more pro-pipeline,
you don't deserve to be heard.
No, I'm mad because, again, I wish that they would have taken the opportunity to talk about the auto industry and really kind of speak to Ontarians, because you need that vote base. And so I think that's a miss. The other part too, like Jagmeet Singh talking about, the Liberals are pretty pro-pipeline. Like, what?
Yeah, that's no. Read the room.
Yeah. And the fact that pipeline that they bought, the PBO said would never, ever be profitable because of how they bought it and the ridiculous spending that they put on it. And the fact that there's another bill that actually is an embargo on tankers.
Next bill. That's why oil exports up 50% over the course of the last few years. Secondly,
I don't think
Mr. Singh is absolutely right about the East-West grid interconnections, which is part of the energy corridor. Huge opportunities for this country. We have to be able to do more than one thing. Third point, fundamental point. We can give ourselves far more than Donald Trump can ever take away. If we have one Canadian economy, not 13, and if we just look at that agreement we got with the provinces, look at what Ontario and Nova Scotia have just announced in terms of their steps towards this, this is within our grasp.
Monsieur Blanchet, what should we be prepared to concede in our negotiations with the United States?
I want to be back to something that Mr. Carney said. You can't do something and the opposite, and you can't fill people's mind with nonsense. Quebec has, by law, its own environmental review institution, and you cannot, through a federal decision, even through a Quebec government decision, go over the BAP. as we call it. If the BAP says no,
Just say.
it's no.
I know.
Good.
I know.
Let's
But
keep that in mind.
This is the point. This is, if I may, this is the point. The federal government can do the following, which is to take the decision to abide by the decision of the Quebec BAP. That is within the federal government's power. That is known as cooperative federalism. That's what we need to do.
And do you understand one other point fast?
This is what we need. If we, I mean, this is what we need to do in a crisis.
We have Moïse and then Mr. Poilievre.
Yeah. The building of those pipelines will take at least 10 to 14 years. Mr. Trump will be 90 years old, not president no more. And somebody of course, less terrible will be there before you can even dream of having oil through this pipeline of yours.
We're less than a minute to go. Mr. Poilievre, I promised you next.
Listen, after the last 10 years of liberals blocking pipelines and killing jobs,
Sounds wild when you
we
say that.
actually need to get things done.
sense.
We need a change, and our conservative plan for change will repeal the No New Pipelines law. It will create a true one-stop shop, set up shovel-ready zones with pre-permitting so that we can approve LNG liquefaction export plants, mines, pipelines, nuclear plants, and also hydroelectric dams so that we can generate the power we need to be strong, self-reliant, and stand on our own 2 feet for a change.
Last quick word to Mr. Carney.
Okay, quick word. Bringing it back to what we were talking about, which is tariffs, the threats to Canada, how to negotiate. We need these options. We need these options to build domestically, to build one Canadian economy. We need to act. We need to diversify our trade partners.
And that is
will
our
give us
time in this
strength to the
segment.
US.
That is our time. Okay, you know my job tonight. I got to be the heavy guy here every now and then, making sure everybody comes to time. And I'm keeping an eye as well on making sure.
Moderator's doing a good job, I'll be honest.
Justice over
Yeah.
here.
Agreed.
I appreciate what he's doing. He's staying out of the way.
Our first debate up next: affordability and the cost of living.
This is the one where Poilievre can knock this out of the park.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that was a pretty, didn't go the way I was hoping. We talked about it already. It's just, wish that was focused more on the auto industry and the workers in that situation. That's where it started. Great that we're talking pipelines, but I feel like I'm pretty sure that's a topic later on in the night that could have been addressed. But I get it's tough because, like, I know it's the beginning of the night, whatever. It's nice to get the people who are watching it.
One-on-one questions followed by open debate format. And Mr. Poilievre, you get the first question this time. Many provinces, including some provinces with conservative governments, have ambitious housing targets, none of which have been met. Why do you think your housing plan will be any different?
Let me start by talking to the young people of the nation and those who are aspiring to home ownership. It was only 10 years ago you could buy an average house for $450,000. But in the last lost Liberal decade, housing costs have doubled, rising faster than in any country in the G7. And so now our youth cannot afford a home, and our seniors are worried about being evicted. We can't afford a fourth Liberal term of rising housing costs. We need a change. And our Conservative plan for change will, 1, axe the federal sales tax on new homes. 2, incentivize municipalities to cut their construction taxes to bring houses down in cost by $100,000. 3, sell off federal land for homes. And 4, train up 350,000 young trades workers who can help build those homes. Because you deserve a home, and we're going to make it happen for a change.
Also on the issue of affordability, Mr. Singh, you get the next question. How do you bring down grocery prices in the midst of a trade war?
I appreciate it.
Don't care.
Yeah.
Next.
Because his plan is that they're going to basically have government-appointed pricers who are going to go out and say, this is how much this should cost, this is how much this should cost. And then those, government-appointed price points for the goods and things that you buy will then go to court, and Loblaws will be there with all their high-paid lawyers, and then they'll argue at a price and argue it at a profit margin. I look at this and I go, that's not the way to do it. Yeah. Like, it never was a problem before.
Right.
I never heard of folks going, wow, I really can't afford food. Food is now my luxury.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, to me, that's absurd.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, it's just when talks of taxing the fuel that gets our food places, which then our grocers capitalize on top of that, that's where you get, and then also you print a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Is it was the perfect storm for prices to go through the roof, and that's what we're witnessing.
Yeah, it was a bunch of money printing, like you said, taxation on everything.
Which will soon cost this country $100 billion annually. We understand you would like to expand it. How would you pay for that?
We would want it to be just for everybody because the Liberals have created the discrimination against elders, which are 65 to 75 years old.
I just want it to be for everybody.
Yeah,
I sound like Jagmeet.
Who are over 75. But the best way to do it is to have everybody pay its fair share in terms of tax, which means that one should not be entitled
he just totally threw out the Liberal line. He's like, everybody pay their fair share of tax, straight from the lips of the Liberal Party.
Billions of dollars in taxes that could be used to help the situation of elders. Those are things which are supposed to be applied to everybody. There are a lot of questions to be answered about that. Other ways to do it is to reduce the pressure on housing price, to make sure that the whole budget of elders and families and workers can afford houses which have increased dramatically in price.
Monsieur Blanchet. That's time for this one. Mr. Carney, I want to ask you about housing, which over the past decade has gone from a problem to a crisis while the Liberals were in power. Is your policy on getting homes built any different from your predecessors, and how?
This is one of the reasons why I entered this contest, because of the housing crisis, the cost of living crisis, the housing crisis, and the Trump crisis, to help fix it. And I would say, look, the housing approach is fundamentally different because we need a fundamentally different approach. We need to build housing at a rate that we haven't seen since the end of the Second World War. We do need a fundamentally different approach. And with the fundamentally different approach, we can build an entirely new industry. So the question is how? Now, Mr. Poilievre and I agree on some things. Okay, I agree as well on reducing the tax on first-time home purchases as a way to buy. But I am focused on increasing the supply of homes and doing that in a way that uses Canadian technology and modular prefabricated housing, that uses Canadian lumber, including in reinforced timber, and uses Canadian workers. And in all respects, we're scaling up to double the rate of home building.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. That's time. We now move to open forum here. And Mr. Singh, you get the first comment. Many of you have pledged to cut the GST on many aspects of buying a home. And Mr. Singh, I want to ask you, would you cut the GST on anything else in order to make life more affordable?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm the only one on this stage that fought to give people a GST holiday. Interestingly, while the GST holiday helps working class folks, middle class folks by taking off the GST off essentials,
because you know the GST holiday was a resounding success.
They opposed the idea
it didn't really harm any store owners or small businesses or anyone.
Millionaires a tax break, which shows you whose side he's on, which is not surprising. But what is surprising is that Mr. Carney also said that giving people a break on their GST is a bad idea. Mr. Carney, why do you think giving a tax break to capital gains folks that earn more than $1 million is a good idea, but helping a family afford their groceries, helping people afford their bills for their internet, their cell phone, their home heating, giving them relief to take the GST off those is a bad idea, but giving a tax break to people who really only earn over more than $1.4 million, that's somehow a good idea.
Okay, you went after
that's your numbers.
You went after Mr. Poilievre first, so I'm going to give him the first shot to respond.
Well, Mr. Carney, the reality is that housing costs doubled under the Liberal government, while Justin Trudeau made exactly the same promises that you are now repeating today. He promised that he would double home building. In fact, home building went down. He promised that he'd reduce the cost. In fact, it went up. And here we are. Mark Carney is asking for a fourth Liberal term, repeating the exact same Liberal promises that priced you out of a house. Just a few weeks ago, before the election, the Liberals voted against taking the GST off new homes, and they have continued to build up bureaucracies that block construction. We need a change so that you can afford a home, and our change will be, again, to axe the sales tax on new homes, incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development costs. Train up 350,000 young people who can be in the trades to build those homes and sell off the land that is going to be needed in order to build homes. That is a real plan for you to own a home and afford your life for a change.
Mr. Carney, they're coming at you from both sides. What do you say?
Okay. I know it may be difficult, Mr. Poilievre. You spent years running against Justin Trudeau on the carbon tax, and they're both gone. Okay, they're both gone. And we're in a new
impersonation of them with the same policies tonight.
Very different. Look, I'm a very different person from Justin Trudeau. Focus is on results.
Were you his economic
advisor? And so how to drive results in the housing market, you've got to change the model of building. You've got to increase the financing for housing developers, $25 billion on the table for those housing developers, $10 billion for deeply affordable homes, cutting development charges in half, lowering the cost of the building of those homes by 20%, and lowering the emissions and the run costs of those homes by another 20%. This is how you drive affordability. This is how you bring young people back into the housing market.
Exactly what Trudeau and then Mr. Singh.
You claim to be very different from Mr. Trudeau. Now, the point is to show that you are any better than Mr. Trudeau. You claim to have a lot of experience in many things, and you know things. Last time we had somebody saying that they knew things, it was the senators, and they killed the law that protected supply management because they knew better than us and were elected by nobody, exactly like you are today. You say that you are a great crisis manager. Which one? I heard of nothing. As far as I know, Brexit happened, even if you were against it. You say you are a great negotiator. What have you negotiated but fiscal paradises in Bermudas or Cayman Islands? You have to prove something, and you have to reveal what you own in those companies if you want people to believe you.
Mr. Singh, you wanted to...
Yes, returning to the topic of housing. Now, it's very important. Obviously, we need to build homes that people can afford. Mr. Poilievre had the opportunity to show us what he could do.
He
was the Minister of Housing under
what he stands
Stephen
for,
Harper.
but I love him
guess how many
as
homes he
a
built?
politician.
He built 6 homes
sense.
during that entire time. This is not something you can trust. To build homes.
Bring it back to 6
He built
homes.
200,000.
This has been confirmed again and again. He built 6 homes. That's it. Now, the problem, though, with Mr. Carney as well, he's laid out a plan. The problem is that when he was the chair of Brookfield Investments, this is a company that made a strategic decision to buy up affordable homes in cities like Toronto where people were paying a decent rent. And they purposely bought those homes, kicked out the tenants, and jacked up the rents. That is not someone you can trust, sadly, to deal with the housing crisis when, Mr. Carney, you profited off of it.
We're going to get responses here. Mr. Poilievre first, Mr. Carney second.
First of all, Mr. Singh, the Toronto Star, the Toronto Star debunked your falsehoods.
It was 6 homes,
and I appreciate neither Liberals or NDP are very good with math, but in that year, I was minister, if I could,
which is great.
The year I was,
Singh, let's let him answer.
In the year I was
high enough, though.
The year I was minister, we had 200,000 homes built, and guess what the average price of a home was at the time? $450,000.
And guess what happened
and
at the end of the conservative reign?
one bedrooms rented out for $900, and that's since that time, housing costs have actually doubled under the Liberals.
They doubled
and now
under
we have
Conservatives, too.
now we have Mr. Carney making tens of billions of dollars of spending promises that will ultimately continue to build bureaucracy. We don't need more bureaucracy in Ottawa. We tried that for 10 Liberal years, Mr. Carney. What we need is to build homes in communities. And that means axing taxes on home building and getting the government out of the way so that builders can actually build.
I think,
Mr. Carney, you are on housing. We need a change, and you, sir, are not a change.
Mark Carney.
Very well said.
I thought that answer was quite revealing. The first thing is that it's an attitude towards housing that absolutely ignores affordable housing, deeply affordable housing, issues with vulnerable people, ignores the rental market, ignores all other aspects of it. So the 6 are the relevant. Mr. Singh is absolutely right. The 6 are the relevant.
Oh, they're pushing lies again. Okay,
the
cool.
200,000 are a different part of the housing market. There are many Canadians. There are many Canadians at different income levels. The second thing it reveals is
I want to own your home.
A misunderstanding, I'll be polite, of how the government's balance sheet can catalyze enormous private investment. And that is what we need to do to solve the housing crisis. It happens to be what we need to do as a whole.
We just need Brookfield
address the economic crisis that's been forced on us by President Trump.
Mr. Blanchet?
Yeah. You have spoken much more than I have, so I won't ask a question. I will make a statement instead. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying that you cannot do what you pretend that you are able to do. We just have no proof so far. I'm saying quite clearly that you cannot be entitled to do it alone. You cannot be entitled to hold all the power in your two hands. You cannot go out there and fix things for Canada and Quebec without being seriously checked by serious people. You cannot go out there and speak for Quebec without Quebec having its own strong voice to protect itself and to promote its different economy. So if you want to collaborate, let's say right now that whatever happens, even if minority government happens, you will be a partner with the different Quebec economy and identity, which you have been not interested in for the economic part and not respectful for the identity part.
Let me get Mr. Singh in at this point. Can you tell us what's the first thing you would do to make life more affordable for Canadians?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do, and I've laid out some of those things. I think fundamentally, I'm the only person on stage that not only fought for real relief for people in terms of affordability, I'm the only one that fought for pharmacare that actually makes life more affordable by giving people medication coverage, dental care that gives people more affordability by letting them access their services if you're a senior and a kid. I fought for childcare to make sure people could afford childcare. All measures that Mr. Poilievre voted against, all measures that Mr. Blanchet voted against. So if you want someone that's going to fight for you in Ottawa to actually make life more affordable, you can't entrust all the power to Mr. Carney. He doesn't have a track record of making life more affordable for people, but we do. So vote for a New Democrat, and we'll continue this work to make life more affordable for you, while the Conservatives and the Bloc have voted against those measures to make life affordable, because that's not who they care about. New Democrats are in it for you.
Pierre Poilievre.
The number one expense for families today is taxes, more than they spend on food, clothing, and shelter combined. This after 10 years of Liberal tax increases. We can't afford a fourth term of high Liberal taxes. That's why Conservatives have a plan for change. And that plan includes
voted against every measure to help people out.
Cutting income taxes by 15% for the average worker and senior, saving a working couple up to $2,000, rewarding hard work again. Because hard work is actually being punished. Is actually being punished because of the very high taxes. Now, the Liberals promised 10 years ago they would lower them. They actually raised taxes on 9 out of 10 Canadians. We need a change in this country because your hard work should once again pay off with a powerful paycheck that buys you an affordable affordable home,
so you want to save
on
people
a safe street, and that's what we will deliver.
You want to save people $2,000, but cut their dental care, which is thousands of dollars. Cut their child care, which is thousands of dollars. Cut pharmacare coverage, which is thousands of dollars. That's not a very good math deal right there. You're going to save people $2,000, but cost them tens of thousands of dollars. That's why you cannot afford Conservatives, and you certainly can't trust the Liberals on their own.
Turn.
You need New Democrats.
Mark Carney.
I'm going to reinforce that point, and then I'll respond to Mr. Blanchet.
Here we go.
Childcare in this country, $3,000 to $10,000 a year for a family, depending on where you live.
Province, jurisdiction.
Depending on where you live, that's what's being saved there. $800 per trip to the dentist. We've expanded dental care to 8 million Canadians. 8 million Canadians. Pharmacare. These are fundamental issues for affordability. We're talking about affordability and taking them off in order.
That's why you need
tax.
Quebec,
That's not what I've said.
And in terms of
income taxes
working with Quebec
for Canadians,
yes, absolutely. Throughout the short time I've been Prime Minister, working directly with the Premier of Quebec, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, our Minister of Finance are from Quebec. Quebec and Quebec issues, whether it's
why haven't you answered Mr. Legault's letter? He asked 5 things in the letter. He reduced his expectations.
We're talking about,
and you did not even answer him. And tonight, you are so much in love with Quebec.
Steve, the question that Canadians have to ask.
Why vote for Conservatives?
He's got the Mr. Singh, sorry, he has the floor. Come on.
The question you have to ask is, after a decade of Liberal promises, can you afford food? Is your housing more affordable than it used to be? What is your cost of living like compared to what it was a decade ago? And are you prepared to elect the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal staffers all over again for a fourth term. Mr. Carney, Justin Trudeau's staffers are actually here with you at this debate in Montreal, writing the talking points that you are regurgitating into the microphone.
What?
You are any different than the previous 10 years of Liberal government.
25 seconds left in this segment for you to respond to that.
Look, I do my own talking points. Thank you very much. The biggest risk we have to affordability, the biggest risk we have to this economy is Donald Trump.
Oh, here we go.
We've got to get that right.
When in doubt,
Secondly,
go back to Trump. That's all he's got.
In a way that brings everyone along together. That means preserving pharmacare, dental care, child care, reinforcing health care, spending our
intrusion in Quebec.
Oh, yes!
I like if we're any better than we are.
The clock
is there one thing Canadians can do that Quebecers cannot do? You are doing intrusions in our jurisdiction with our money, pretending you are better, and most of the time you try to copy what we did with our own money against us. What's that?
That really is time for this segment.
Get destroyed.
That was awesome.
We got 20 seconds before we move on.
So basically, looking at that, Blanchette, totally nailed it. Him saying about the intrusion, that's exactly what Danielle Smith was saying. That's what the other provinces have been saying. Them trying to drum up that, scare about dental care and child care and farmers care. We already have those things in the provinces, but they're not well funded because of the way that our healthcare transfers are set up. Instead, we're giving billions to Sun Life out of Ottawa to do the things that the provinces can already do for themselves. They just need the funding to actually do it well. And so that's where I'm just really annoyed that you could have given that money back to the provinces.
One-on-one questions and then open debate. Monsieur Blanchet, you get to go first in this one. Public safety and security. For a lot of people, that means the fentanyl crisis. I'd like to know what you could contribute to ending that crisis in this country.
The fentanyl crisis is a very serious issue, which is a bit less important in Quebec than it is in British Columbia. I think the whole border thing is the real issue. Immigration is a very important issue for Quebecers. Immigration has to be dealt with in an orderly fashion. Our borders are not dealt with in an orderly fashion. The rules are not respected. The rules are unclear. Some rules even invite people to hide for 2 weeks illegally before coming out. Some things has to be done. The situation of one person asking for asylum may take as much as 4 years without us reducing the number in order to deal with them in a human way. The services for every citizen in Quebec are being reduced because we cannot afford the fact that we are receiving much, much more people in Quebec from this specific type of immigration than we can afford, and we cannot teach them French.
That's time, Monsieur Blanchet. We can, of course, return to the immigration issue during open debate, should you choose to. Mr. Carney, question for you. The Liberal gun buyback policy, not considered a success by many people. Is in your platform. Why would it work this time?
Yeah, I think what we've seen with that policy is some success at the commercial level, but not at the individual level, because it hasn't been, in my opinion, it hasn't been organized properly, and it needs to be organized properly. And instructed the Minister of National Security and Public Safety in order to do that. So part of this is a different focus of government, a focus on results, a focus on clear milestones in the short term. Let me make a broader point, though, on gun, which is that we have a problem with guns coming over borders, which is why we've tightened our borders. We have an issue, though, with a gun industry that is continually coming up with new forms of assault rifles, mass killing machines. We banned over 2,000 of these. Every single time there has been a vote in the House of Commons on gun control, Mr. Poilievre has voted against it. You can't be tough on crime unless you're tough on guns.
Mr. Poilievre, you can come back on that in the open debate if you want to, but my question for you in this segment is, Indigenous people are statistically overrepresented in our correction system. Are you concerned that your tough on crime platform will make that worse?
I'm concerned that Indigenous people are disproportionately the victims of crime. I give you the example of a wonderful group of Indigenous people who came under attack in Saskatchewan, and many of them were murdered. Killer was out of jail, after 60 prior convictions. This is the result of 10 years of liberal laws that allow the same offenders to be released dozens and dozens of times, even when it's known they are a danger. We can't risk a fourth liberal term of soft on crime policies.
I agree.
We need a change. And the Conservative plan for change will bring in a 3 strikes you're out law. 3 convictions for serious crimes, you go to jail for at least 10 years, maybe for life, no chance of parole or bail. We will bring in life sentences for traffickers of fentanyl, human beings, and guns, and we will secure our borders to keep the illegal guns
Thank you, Mr. Polyev. That's time. Mr. Singh, your question is
That was
about
good.
the RCMP.
I like
because
that.
you've got RCMP reform in your platform. What, in your view, is the problem with the RCMP?
Well, some of the basis for this is the concern that's been raised in more rural communities and northern communities that there have been some serious concerns about violence or inappropriate use of force when it comes to the execution of their duties. We want to make sure that we've got a top-tier police force
was the
that
right word to
provides
use there.
security and safety to those communities in a way that's sensitive and understanding of the communities they're serving. I also think what's very important is for Indigenous communities, Indigenous policing. This is an area of deep concern. I think everyone in our country should be safe. You should be able to be safe at home, safe when you go to work, safe if you take public transit, safe for your kids to be able to play in the local playground. And that's something I'm committed to. The other area that I'm focused on when it comes to public safety is making sure we prevent crime before it happens. And that's why we want to see increased investments in our border security. We saw under the Conservatives, they cut 1,100 border officers in one day. So that prevented our ability to keep our borders safe. That stops those materials from
Mr.
coming
Singh,
into the
that's
country.
time. Not sure it was about the RCMP, but maybe we can get back to that during the open debate segment.
Dude, this moderator's on one
right
right.
now.
I like
Mr.
it.
Polyev, you get the first word on this one, and it sort of dovetails on the last answer you gave, which is you have pledged to be the first prime minister in this country to use the notwithstanding clause, setting aside charter rights of, as you call them, multiple murderers. Why do you think that's necessary?
To be clear, I want to uphold the charter rights of Canadians under Section 7 to life, liberty, and security of the person. Right now, that right is violated by multiple murderers who are given discounts. The case in question was a gentleman who went into a mosque and shot dead 6 innocent worshipers. He got, according to this ruling, only one 25-year sentence, meaning he can be out in his 50s. He only serves 4 years for every murder that he carried out. That is outrageous.
Yeah.
And I will use
Totally
the
agree.
constitutional powers that are created for this purpose to ensure that mass murderers stay in maximum security penitentiary for life. They will only come out in a box. We will also pass tough new laws that prevent repeat offenders from getting out. If you commit 3 offenses under the 3 strikes law I propose, you will not be allowed out of jail until you prove that you are drug-free, that you are behaved perfectly, and that you've learned an employable skill, and you've served a 10-year sentence. We cannot allow liberal crime and chaos to go on terrorizing our communities. What we need is a real plan for change so that we can bring back the safety and the security that Canadians used to take for granted.
Let me get Mr. Carney to respond to that. Do you think that's an appropriate use of the notwithstanding clause of the charter?
I'm liking this.
I think that the one of the core responsibilities of the federal government, Prime Minister, is to defend the fundamental rights and liberties of Canadians. And those fundamental rights and liberties of Canadians are outlined in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is 43 years old literally today. I think it's a very dangerous slope to override judgments of the Supreme Court of Canada.
Says the guy who is like,
Don't say slippery.
In fact, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms exists to protect Canadians from people like us on the stage, politicians who may use their power to override fundamental rights. And the issue
like you?
in using by the federal government, I'll stop here, is not where you start, but where will you stop?
Mr. Polyev,
great question.
I should get Mr. Polyev on that. Is it a slippery slope if you
Maybe
use it in
you'll
this
freeze
case?
bank accounts.
I would
Yeah.
be quite
And, you know.
interested too, because Mr.
Call them an
Carney
insurrection.
said that he didn't
Yeah.
want us to use the notwithstanding clause before adopting a law. And yesterday he said that he felt that it was wrong to use the notwithstanding clause after a law is adopted. So if we cannot use it before and we cannot use it after, it means that Mr. Carney believes that we should never use it. But it is very important. And the Ford case made it clear. The Constitution says how it should be used, but never how or what we will do with it, because it's the prerogative of the provinces. So do you want the Supreme Court to overrule another judgment of the same Supreme Court because you don't like it? Because that would be being the hell of a politician as you define them.
Well, let me just start by saying, first of all, thank you. I just started by saying, let's not let Mr. Poilievre get away with.
Also, just want to acknowledge the super chats in the chat. We'll get to those when we get a break here, but we appreciate it, and I've been reading them, so we'll get to that.
Obviously, that is not a special position that he's taking. Everyone agrees that horrible crimes should have horrible sentences. Judges are equipped to do that, so don't let Mr. Poilievre's rhetoric confuse people. Obviously, everyone agrees that if someone does something horrible, they should pay a horrible price for it. There should be appropriate sentence that's put in place by a judge. But what I'm concerned about is all of what Mr. Poilievre is talking about is after the fact. Now, there's heinous things that happen, and there needs to be severe penalties put in place. But we also need to keep communities safe. And that's what my focus is. Well, how do we stop crime before it happens? Much of the violent crime that's committed is committed by illegal handguns and firearms that come across the border. Now, Mr. Poilievre has admitted that as well, that it is illegal handguns and illegal weapons that are used in violent crime. So our plan is, let's stop those illegal weapons getting into our country in the first place. And the way we do that is by having stronger border security officers and having more people on the border. Mr.
Just answer super chats while Jagmeet talks. He's totally mutable.
Cut the number of border officers. They reduce the number, weakening our borders.
Keeping an eye on time
Can't
here.
trust them.
Let's
to
get
do
back
these
to
type of
Mr.
things.
Poilievre on the issue of whether, in using the notwithstanding clause under these circumstances, would be a kind of a slippery slope and encourage politicians to use it more.
No, we will use it to protect the charter rights of law-abiding Canadians. I'm interested in the rights of victims. Mr. Carney seems to be very interested in the rights of criminals. He says that it's dangerous for me to ensure that mass murderers stay behind bars for life. You know what's dangerous? Turning them loose on our streets. I don't think you appreciate, sir, the chaos that is unfolding in communities. In Toronto right now, the police have been forced to tell people to just let the thief steal the car. When they break into the house, just take the keys. Just let them take the keys so that you don't get hurt. People are living in terror in many of our communities precisely because of the catch and release bail law, C-75, which requires judges release the accused at the earliest opportunity under the least onerous conditions. Every single member of your Liberal caucus and your Liberal cabinet voted in favor of this bill, and they are all determined to keep it in place despite constant promises to the contrary. Mr. Carney, Canadians deserve to live in peace and security. That is the right that I'm fighting for a change.
I'm fighting for that as well. And let me be specific about two things that have been raised. The first is with respect to these issues of car theft, home invasion, and I'll use the GTA area where there has been a sharp increase. How do you attack that? You attack it several ways. One, you increase the criminal penalties for that happening, particularly if you're part of a gang, particularly if you use a firearm.
And you will do that?
And we're doing so. We've committed to doing so. You put in place a reverse onus in terms of bail so that it has to be proven that there's not a risk, which we've also committed to. And then you go to what Mr. Singh was talking about, which is we have to reinforce our frontiers.
Which is what we've committed to, not what we've done. We need that differentiation. This government has been in power for 10 years and not done this, but yet they're committed to.
Initiative where we've added to the RCMP there, we've added drones, we're adding helicopters, we're adding surveillance, and we're going to the other end of the chain with respect to car theft, which is tightening security at the ports. This is what we need. In order to get results, you need to focus at both ends of the chains in federal government.
Thank you very much. I want to talk about one of the issues that has come up is the idea.
The chat is hilarious. You guys are killing me. Oh, man.
We'll hit the couple of super chats here. Do you got them on your end?
I can go back pretty quick.
Here we go. A Western 91 saying, look through history. Any government that takes guns is quickly followed by tyrannical overreach. Beware. And then follow it up with Mac Yushu says, all liberal policies failed. High drug addiction, high level of drug dealers coming from the south invading our reserves in Northern Ontario from a native. Fascinating.
There was one previous to that.
Yep. I can't go that far back, unfortunately.
An organization of moms that have lost their children to this opioid overdose crisis. They've literally had their children have died because of this. And they're saying we need to do everything possible to save lives, to stop this death from happening. And I think we need to listen to those moms. And that's my commitment.
Mr. Blanchet.
Two things as rapidly as possible. First, we believe that we should act on crime gangs and organizations, defining them as we do for terrorist organization. We have to protect our kids from the violence of those gangs, from the drugs being sold by those gangs, from the guns and whatever else being stolen, sale, being by those gangs, not sold, being, you purchase a thing and
oh no, Blanchette.
sold by those gangs. And we mostly have to protect our kids from being recruited by those gangs, becoming violent at 13 and 14 and 16 years old, because this is the real fear of parents like I am. This is a very dangerous situation. I want to come back to immigration because we said that we would come back to immigration. Do you remember the Century Initiative?
He brought it up. Let's go.
They said that they had not considered Quebec difference. They had not considered Quebec language. They wanted Canada to be a 100 million people country by the end of the century. Mr. Barton told me himself that he had not even thought about the Quebec difference in that analysis, and one of his closest collaborators is now a close consider to Mr. Carney, which seems to be part of that kind of project or ideology. So it is impossible for Canada to have all those people coming to Canada.
Sound guy figured it out.
It is impossible for Quebec to receive all those people. And in Quebec, we have the language and values and secularity of the state issue, which is very important. So I say, pause. Let's do things properly. Let's receive migrants in an orderly fashion and successfully as a measure of respect for them also.
Mr. Poilievre, you wanted a word.
I speak to families all the time who are terrified by the scourge of drugs and illegal guns. And we know those guns are not Grandpa Joe's hunting rifle. So when the Liberals try to ban hunting rifles, they're really going after the wrong people. 90% of guns that come in that are used in crime are smuggled illegally over the porous, Liberal-run borders.
The border,
and that's why the police. It's not true, and that's why the police actually, if I could, the police actually endorsed me. The police in Barrie, in Peel, in Sault Ste. Marie have all endorsed me because they know that I will go after the gun smugglers and criminals with 2,000 extra frontline border guards that will stop the guns from coming in. But unlike the Liberals and NDP, I will not ban hunting rifles. The Liberals want to protect. I want to protect Canadians from criminals. The Liberals want to protect turkeys from hunters. I think we know which one makes the most sense.
That was a super chat. Mr. Carney, then I got a question for each of you before this segment.
Super chat was that, we're going to protect the turkeys.
We support hunting and rights of hunters and Indigenous Canadians. But I want to raise an issue, which is a serious issue, talking about safety. There are people, we're in Montreal, in Toronto, across this country, who fear going to their synagogue, fear going to their community center, fear taking their children, leaving their children in school. And this has to stop. This is it's totally unacceptable. So what we're proposing is to make it a criminal offense to threaten or to impede anyone from being near or going to their place of worship, their school, their community center. This, it pains me that when we have to do it, because this is not what we should be doing as Canadians, of course, but we will put that in place.
Let me get
and this is a fundamental issue with respect.
Let me get 10 seconds from each of you before this segment's out on what you perceive to be the biggest security threat to Canada right now. 10 seconds each. Mr. Poilievre.
Please say foreign interference.
The physical security threat to our country is the rampant crime wave that is running out of control. After the last decade, we had a 116% increase in gun crime. We need to lock up the criminals.
I got to hold you to 10 seconds. Mr. Carney?
Well, we're in a security section. I think we didn't have a chance to talk about anything internationally. I think the biggest security threat to Canada is China.
What?
Mr. Singh.
Biggest security threat, illegal guns and drugs
That
coming
was a
across
miss,
the border,
Pierre.
and cuts to services that would make our public safety and security even worse.
Last word to Monsieur Blanchet.
The fact that neither Quebec or Canada is able to protect itself, and that we are still dependent and entirely dependent on American to protect us.
Like the oil.
That is the end of that section, gentlemen.
Yikes.
Carney brought it up.
I'm stunned by that.
I am as well. Like, that was such a miss by the Conservatives.
Yep.
The fact that Carney brought it up, now Carney owns that topic.
Yep.
Like, I don't know. You're going to need a Blanchette to come in and be like, well, that's really rich that you said that, blah, 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 in his classic style. Because otherwise, like, he took the fire out of that. Holy crap.
That was the answer. Like, China was the answer on that. Like,
yeah.
Energy and climate change. I know how much all of you love talking about pipelines, so here we go. Mr. Singh, to you first. Should Canada build new pipelines to get our oil and gas to market?
Well, it's not an approach I favor with public money. There's not any projects that are on the table, so it's not a specific project to look at. I favor, when it comes to the environment, building an east-west energy grid that connects low-cost energy and allows for families to reduce their electricity costs. But let's put this all in context. We're talking about what our energy solutions are in the context of a climate crisis. And we're not just talking about a climate crisis in the far future. We're living it right now. I remember I met a mom a couple of years ago before I had kids who told me she was worried about taking her kids out on some days because of the forest fires in BC. It meant that it was unsafe for kids to go outdoors. Fast forward to when I became a parent just a couple of years after that.
You're talking on 10 years old and tell, buddy, we're over it.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Again, we said it before the debates even started. Proper forestry management.
Yeah.
It's all you need.
It's pretty simple.
And maybe throw the people who start fires in jail and make them pay for all the damages.
Yeah, that'd be a nice idea, wouldn't it?
You know?
Yeah.
You think?
Where does fighting climate change land on your list of priorities when it comes to expanding energy opportunities in this country?
It lands within our priorities of bringing home jobs while bringing down emissions around the world. Look, the reality is
well done.
that if we push production out of our country to more polluting countries, it actually makes the problem worse. But that has been exactly the Liberal approach with the anti-development law, C-69, blocking of 15 LNG export plants over the last 10 years. We have seen more of those jobs go abroad. I want to bring them home. My plan will be to approve, for example, natural gas liquefaction and export. If we sent our gas to India, for example, to displace half of their demand for electricity, we could reduce emissions by 2.5 billion tons, which is 3 times the total emissions of Canada.
Perfect.
That's the way we bring emissions down and jobs up. It's common sense. And now it's time to bring it home.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. The next question is for Mr. Carney. How would your government fast-track pipelines and mining projects while also following the Supreme Court decision that requires consent of Indigenous communities?
Well, I think the first thing, and this goes back a bit to where we started, which is recognizing that we are in a crisis. We need to act with maximum force and having a process.
I think that was a miss of a question,
but
honestly.
A consultation with a purpose, which is to identify those projects, those investments of national interest that are really going to move the dial in terms of growth, jobs, energy security, while being consistent with long-term competitiveness, which necessarily means lower carbon. And so part of that process is ensuring that First Nations, Indigenous peoples, are there from the start. It also includes their ability to participate fully in those projects, and that's why, and I know I can tell, like, you've got to tell on when I've gone on too long, so finish up. which is, that's why.
Then wrap it up. Yeah,
Our
seriously.
proposal is to double the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program to $10 billion. What does that actually mean? It means an ability for them to invest
Cut 'em off.
equity in
Thank
those
you, Mr.
projects.
Carney.
and be
That's
Thank
full
you.
partners.
Yeah.
See
ya.
my time is my clock, and my clock is at 0, so that's how it goes.
Bye,
Mr.
Felicia.
Blanchet, do you still oppose pipeline construction in Quebec, even though a majority of Quebecers now apparently say they support it?
That's a good
know
question.
about that
Yeah.
when we have held the debate about that, which has not begun yet. We are just beginning it. First, we are hearing very creative numbers, and we are being fed nonsense. And we will be back to it in a few minutes. But energy.
Thank you so much, Tammy Lynn, for the
trade
super chat. Appreciate it.
commerce is from south to north or north to south. And it's true in Quebec also. In a little more than 3 years, Donald Trump won't be in office. And there will be not one more pipeline having been built once we get there. So let's be serious.
So how Pierre has to
responsible,
respond to that is
and
he said
we will
that is
be
the
back
status
with
quo under the
numbers.
Liberals.
We don't want
Under a
to
Conservative
pay
government,
Quebec
we
for
will have
such
pipelines in 3 years. There will be
monstrosities
shovels in the
which
ground
will
in the
provide
year.
us
That's how he
with
needs to respond
nothing.
to that.
We now move to open debate, and you all
Here we go.
will get a chance, or have had a chance, to get the first shot at this. Monsieur Blanchet, it is your turn to get the first shot. Canada has a substantial supply of critical minerals, which are in high demand. Are you in favor of allowing these minerals to be mined?
Of course, it has to be done properly. Quebec has probably the most important clean phosphate reserves in North America. In Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, it is very important. It has to be exploited. This is the best way to use Paul Saguenay as an infrastructure that we need. We have lithium. Everybody needs lithium. Transportation has to be taken from oil to clean energy. This is what we want to be working on. It is part of the specifics of Quebec economy. So we are in favor of that. But we don't want to pay for the $30 billion which have been spent on oil and gas by the Liberals last year. It's $7 billion from Quebec. We don't want to pay for the $40 billion which have been spent by the Liberals on Trans Mountain. It's $9 billion from Quebec. Those are $16 billion of which not $1 has been spent in Quebec to develop a lot more power and wealth for Quebecers with our own money.
We need to let the leader of the Liberals respond.
Well, actually, I was going to pick up on the enormous opportunity that exists in Quebec, exists in Ontario, exists in the north of Canada, really exists across this great nation in terms of critical metals and minerals. We are have one of the biggest resources in this country. And it's not just an enormous economic opportunity, it is a strategic opportunity for Canada. So we have to make a decision, not just to develop it, but how do we develop it and who are our partners for it? Do we become more dependent on the United States, which is what they want? By the way, President Trump this week said he might put a tax on critical metals and minerals, just showing again
Yeah, but
the unreliable.
the job is not
if I may,
to-
and so the discussions
to negotiate,
So
not to have
if I may
Let's let him
finish.
Thank you, Blanchet.
Yeah,
Thanks
do
for
your
being
job.
the voice of reason there. The
opportunity
job is to
includes in Europe
negotiate,
and
not to
includes
throw
in
more
Asia as
tariffs
our
on.
partners. Last point. In order to get it
Thank
done,
you.
in order to get it done, we'll put in place a first and last mile fund. So these projects are connected to road and rail so they can go quickly to market. And we will have all of the other fast tracking measures in place that I talked about earlier in terms of capital, timing, approvals, so that we can
done
move
with this
quickly.
fool, honestly.
There you go, Brown.
Always with the
Mr. Singh.
approval of
Yeah,
Quebec.
I feel like the chat feels like
we
I
should
do.
absolutely
It's like, shut up, Mark.
take advantage of the fact that we've got incredible amounts of critical minerals in our
Okay.
country. And the way we do that
You
is
wanna hear
with
him?
I don't
any
wanna hear
energy
him.
project or any project of this nature. make
What a
sure
guy.
we've got the-
One of the things that I'm thinking here too is just the fact that when they're talking about critical minerals, they keep missing the second part, and the second part is developing the add value, processing, doing that within our borders in an environmentally respectful way, and also creating the product that is actually worth the money, not just mining it up and shipping it out the way that we do with all of our natural resources for some reason. I don't understand why we've done that and why we don't continue to work on the add value
We fought
part.
against it again and again.
No, you voted
And then
for
the
it.
Liberals have continued to do it. And so my question really to Mr. Carney is, will you commit to ending oil and gas subsidies? We should be using that to invest in people, not giving it to highly
Look how
profitable oil and
annoyed
gas
he
companies.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we talk.
I promised Mr. Poilievre the next, we'll come back and get that question answered. Mr. Poilievre.
Well, Mr. Carney, you point out that Donald Trump has a wrong-headed idea of putting a tax on our mines and our industry. And that is wrong. But so do you. You want to apply a massive industrial carbon tax on Canadian mines, Canadian steel mills, Canadian aluminum plants,
You want to let them just pollute as
Canadian
much as they
oil
want?
and gas. And your idea is to double the tax that Trump is applying by hitting them a second time. This will do nothing for the environment. It will actually ship our jobs south of the border,
Mr. Poilievre's
just
plan is let them
like
pollute as much as they
President
want.
Trump
Not a good
wants. My plan is to bring that production home here to Canada. For example, I will give a tax credit to low-emitting Canadian industry like Quebec's aluminum, for example, or British Columbia's natural gas, so that we not only bring home the production, but we do it below global average levels of emissions, so that we actually help the environment while bringing home the jobs for our
Shut
people.
up, Jagmeet. You need to shut his mic off. I'm sick and tired of hearing from him.
Sensible, pragmatic
I'm dead
approach
serious.
that puts us in charge of our
Holy
economic
smokes.
destiny, so we can stand up to the Americans from a position of strength for a change.
Mr. Carney, we've got. Hang on a second. I want to give you a chance to speak to Mr. Singh's criticism about oil and gas subsidies and Mr. Poilievre's criticism about the industrial carbon tax.
Okay, I'm going to make 3 points. I'll make 4 if you want me to respond to that, but I want to make 3. The first is that I answered this question last night, but I think the puck had already dropped in the Canadians game, so not everyone heard it. Yes, end to oil and gas subsidies.
That's why you need New Democrats.
Secondly, I would have done it independently. Secondly, recognizing that the biggest component of that was the cost of building Keystone, which is the pipeline which has helped to increase oil and gas oil exports rather by 50% in this country. That is an asset of the people of Canada. We own it. And the question of what to do it. So it's not a subsidy that has disappeared. It's actually an asset of Canada. Let me make a third point, though, in terms of where the oil and gas industry, particularly the oil industry, wants to and needs to go, which is to become low carbon in the production and transportation of oil. One of the big projects we need to move forward with is carbon capture and storage, the Pathways project, so that we have oil and gas that is competitive, not just today, 10 years from now and 20 years from now, as the world uses less. We want to have more market share. We need to do that. My government will move that.
But by definition, a subsidy isn't when we buy a pipeline. I'm talking.
Don't care.
Yep. Thank you so much, Jay Rossetti. Thank you. He says, or they say, thanks, guys, Montreal Boomers. We appreciate it.
Let's go.
But yeah, why?
Industrial carbon tax?
How much will the industrial carbon tax
Why are they
add to
letting
the
him
price of
talk?
a car?
The first thing I want to say is I'm going to address the broader point. The broader point is the entire absence of a climate plan from Mr. Poilievre, which, by the way, is going to put our industry and our country at a disadvantage as we're looking for new trading partners. Guess what? Most people want to deepen our partnership in Europe, in Asia. Those countries care about whether or not you've made
He definitely wants to deepen the
Second
partnership
thing
in
is,
Asia.
Of course he does.
we're
Yeah,
designing a
definitely.
program so that the big polluters pay Canadians at home for making responsible climate choices, for retrofitting their home, getting their emissions down, or improving otherwise. And that is smart climate policy. It's better for the big polluters, and it's better for Canadians.
Chair Poilievre.
Mr. Carney didn't answer my question. I asked how much would an industrial carbon tax on Canadian steel add to the price of a car? And he won't answer because he knows that it will be very expensive because there's lots of steel in cars. Now, Mr. Carney has temporarily
But do you know the answer?
hidden the
You don't know the
carbon
answer
tax.
either. You're just throwing out random
thousands of
Just
dollars
making it up, though. You don't
extra
know.
cost.
I actually do know the answer to that question. He's wrong.
When you add taxes to steel, you raise the price of everything that uses steel. When you add taxes
a strawman argument to say, you know the price,
when
you
you
don't know the
add
price.
when you
You don't know the
add
answer.
when you add
He's here to
the
learn.
carbon tax onto the price of, for example, fertilizer, you increase the price of food. So while Mr. Carney has temporarily hidden the liberal carbon tax at the pumps while keeping the tax fully in law and planning to raise it after the election, he's also going after a tax on our industry that will ultimately be passed on to you. After a lost liberal decade of rising costs, we cannot afford a fourth liberal term. We need a new government that will fully axe the carbon tax increase the jobs that we have here in Canada, and bring down your cost of living.
We've got just a little over 3 minutes left in this segment. So, Mr. Singh, I want to ask you, do you think climate change is still a priority from Canadians? You're out there. What are you hearing?
Don't care.
Yeah.
You don't get to talk because you're being a jabroni at this point.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm just sitting here, which is kind of sad, but I'm sitting here going, Blanchet, can you just put him in his place?
Yeah.
Like, I wish that I could say the same thing about Polyev in this scenario. Like, I know the tactic right now is that he's been told that he's a bulldog. He's been told that he needs to soften his approach. In this segment, I would just be like, you know, Mr. Singh doesn't respect Canadians the same way he doesn't respect my time to speak to Canadians. So, and then just take it from there, because it's so frustrating to try and listen to somebody and you got him yapping.
And he's the only one doing it.
He's the only one.
Yeah.
Like, Polyev did it once. I watched Mark Carney do it like once. Blanchet has done it like twice with a,
should be
not the jurisdiction kind of thing.
Informed about
Jagmeet Singh does it every single time Pierre opens his mouth.
Denial situation about climate change, which still exists and is very expensive. And I'm sorry to crash your party, guys, but you are telling fairy tales. Clean oil and gas is a fairy tale. Large-scale carbon sequestration, sorry, I'm French, is a fairy tale. It does not exist. If Alberta wanted to exploit oil and gas and it were not a matter of pollution, I wouldn't mind at all. That's their business. Our own powerhouse in terms of energy in Quebec is clean energy. We are the best place in the world to achieve that. Our market is the northeastern part, Democrat part of United States. We want to keep our money to create wealth in Quebec for Quebecers. Let us be different because we can afford to be different.
Let me give, I will get to you because I said I would. But you've taken a couple of hits here, and I want to give you a chance to respond to some of the things that people on this side of the stage have said.
Thank you. Well, first of all, we do support protecting the environment. We want to ban the dumping of raw sewage into our waters. We want to hold large corporations to high environmental standards to protect our water and air. But we cannot do that by raising taxes and sending jobs overseas, as Mr. Carney is proposing to do. That has been the approach of the last 10 years of the Liberal government. What the biggest companies that develop our resources say is that we need to repeal the Liberal anti-development law C-69, a law Mr. Carney wants to keep in place. They say we need to repeal the industrial carbon tax and get rid of the Liberal energy cap. We need 6 months approvals in order to take back energy security and energy sovereignty.
We can summarize that. He wants to conclude as much as possible.
Hang on. Last word to Mr. Carney in this segment, please.
Thank you very much. You know, I was born in Fort Smith in the Northwest Territory, just north of what the oil sands became. When I was born and when I was growing up in Edmonton, early days, it was a fairy tale, quote unquote. But you know what happened? Canadian ingenuity, Canadian engineers, Canadian governments, both the federal government and the Alberta government got together and converted this.
The worst pollution
if I may.
The worst pollution.
That's not true, Blanchet. Get out of here.
10 more seconds to finish, please. Let him finish his point.
That's the opportunity we have. That's the opportunity we have in carbon capture. That's the opportunity we have in small modular reactors. That's the opportunity we have in hydrogen beyond. This country can be a clean energy superpower. My government will help deliver it.
And that is time for this segment. Gentlemen, let us go to our final theme, which is called Leading in a Crisis.
Yeah, so that's kind of that's where I'm at this point. Was like Jagmeet really? He's the only one doing what, for the most part. He's kind of going after everybody unnecessarily because he's not adding anything to the conversation.
Yeah,
and gets to the point where like I know like you can mute his mic, but he's only muted for us, but he's not necessarily muted there.
Yeah,
and so I know like that's probably not what they're thinking. But it's ridiculous still.
So let's get to it. Mr. Carney, you get the first question this time.
Carney's favorite word, crisis.
We haven't balanced a budget in this country in 17 years, and 10 of those years were under your party. You have pledged to get us to a balanced budget in 3 years. Question is, how?
So let me put this in the context of leading in a crisis, which is, in a crisis, you got to plan for the worst. Worst is that the U.S. actually does want to take us over. Secondly, you got to have a plan.
There it is again.
Build, and that'll include a fiscal plan, and I will get to that in a second. The third thing is you need to respond in a crisis with overwhelming force. You need to think big. You need to move rapidly. The things we've been discussing today are a subset of what we can and should do as a nation, and we can deliver. And government can play a role, but its role has to be catalytic. And so our approach is that we will slow the rate of spending. It's been growing at 9% a year.
They're going to slow the rate of spending?
Away from transfers, away from transfers.
Got it.
9% a
Got
year.
it.
We'll slow that to 2%. We will focus on a small amount of capital spending by the federal government in order to drive enormous private investment up to $500 billion by 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Ukraine
We
surely
will
constitutes
pay
a crisis.
the people to tell us that
leading
Brookfield
in a
should
time
get all
of
the
crisis.
contracts.
Mr. Polyev, question for you. If the United States withholds support from Ukraine going forward, do you believe Canada should commit more to assist?
I believe we should continue to support Ukraine. Our party supported donating missiles that the Canadian military was decommissioning. We supported funds and other armaments to back the Ukrainians in the defense of their sovereignty. We also need to rebuild our own Canadian military because the Russians want to make incursions into our waters. We'll be buying 4 massive Arctic icebreakers. I'll be opening the first Arctic base since the Cold War in Canada, CFB Iqaluit. We're going to double the size of the Arctic Rangers and fill the vacancies in our Canadian armed forces. We need a change to rebuild our military, which has been so disintegrated under the cuts and the mismanagement of the last 10 years. But we can have a change because we have the best soldiers, sailors, and airmen in the world, and they will have full backing from my government if you give me the honor of becoming Prime Minister.
I think that was the best way you could answer
in
that.
the open forum, because I'm not sure we got an answer about Ukraine on that one. But okay,
well,
going on. Monsieur Blanchet.
The answer was yes.
We'll get more details, perhaps, as we go forward. Monsieur Blanchet, given the U.S. trade war, should any talk of a referendum on Quebec independence be put on pause?
That one is easy. It will happen only after the negotiation is over, and that's a good thing. I want to say I support the idea we must help Ukraine, but we also must help the civilians of Gaza, and we must destroy Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. You know what? I don't want to be the leader of Canada. You will understand that.
Like, why are you here?
But I can offer to be a partner, a responsible partner, a collaborative partner. If Quebec is respected in its differences, in its aluminum industry and lumberwood industry and culture and French language and values of secularity of the state, which is the price to be paid in order to have real equality, then if we are respected, we will be a partner, and then even Canada will be stronger in its negotiation against Donald Trump. This is what I am offering. Respect us.
Mr. Singh, I watched last night's debate. You seem very eager to talk about health care, so let's talk a little more health care right now. You have made...
Don't care, because you're just going to lie. So. Yeah. Jagmeet Singh in healthcare. He thinks he's the silver bullet analyst over here.
Yeah, well, his solution is you just pay everybody a bunch of money, and then you also pay for a bunch of drugs, and then you just pay until nobody can afford a damn thing, and then everybody takes MAID because literally they can't afford their life. Yeah. So that's the Jagmeet way.
The Claudia Chender approach.
Oh, man.
I know you can't say nothing, but I will say it. So, gee. That's,
but,
yeah. Yeehaw. Yeehaw.
I was like, oh, man, you went there.
Hatchie, man. She upset me last election, so with her stupid calming circles on social media. So, anyways, we move on. But hopefully this guy ends soon because I'm done. I'm done. He's gonna be gone after this election. So I don't know why even bother listening to him.
Yeah, because the polls out there are saying that he's not going to win his own seat.
Yeah.
And then the best part is that his own party hates him. Yeah. And we know that for a fact because we have connections into the NDP party who are saying that. They're like, we don't like him, but we have no mechanism to get rid of him.
We now go to open forum debate, and perhaps, Mr. Polyev, you get the first word here. This might be a good time to put a little more flesh on the bone of what you think Canada could do for Ukraine if the U.S. backs out.
Yes, and my answer is that we should continue to support Ukraine. We don't need to follow the Americans in everything they do. When they're wrong, then we will stand on our own and with other allies. And with respect to Ukraine, that of course includes support with intelligence, equipment, armaments.
Yeah.
But it also includes.
That's a no for me, dog.
Putin.
Yeah.
Right now,
how do you support Ukraine? Build up your own military,
energy market,
and you take care of the Arctic. That's how you do that. That's the answer.
Exports of Canadian natural gas off the Atlantic coast. They blocked multiple projects. I would rapidly approve those projects on national security grounds.
This is a good
we can actually
twist,
ship Canadian natural gas
because
over to Europe.
We're funding Putin
break European
indirectly by allowing Europe.
Putin,
there it
defund
is.
the war and turn dollars for dictators back into paychecks for our people.
Mr. Carney, you wanted to add.
Well, I want to go to the situation in Ukraine because it's very important. We've been a steadfast, Canada has been a steadfast ally, and Canadians have stepped up, welcoming Ukrainians into their homes and supporting them in other ways.
Travi 10-4 saying that was a loaded question for
Prime
Pierre.
Minister, we joined the coalition of the willing to support Ukraine as the U.S. stepped back. So led by France, the United Kingdom, with Ukraine number European nations, Australia, ourselves, New Zealand. That's an example of how the new world is going to be. Canada participating in these areas and helping. It also means open trade. Mr. Poilievre voted against free trade agreement with Ukraine. It means aid for Ukraine. Mr. Poilievre wants to cut foreign aid, including for Ukraine, or not. He didn't mention support for aid for Ukraine. We have to stand by them. We have to be there, and this government has been.
Mr. Singh.
New Democrats absolutely support standing with Ukraine and will continue to do that. But I appreciate the opportunity in talking about leadership in crisis, talk about many of the crises that we're up against. And one of the crises we're up against in our country with the threat of Donald Trump, with the threat of the trade war, and with the privatization and American...
Yeah. So Travi 10-4 saying that was a loaded question for Pierre. If he said no, they would have painted him as some evil guy, which is true. But I think that he needed to switch faster into the idea of that, well, what's funding this war in Ukraine right now? It's the fact that, you know, the rest of Europe is buying its energy from Russia. And we could be that conduit so that we can stop the flow of money to Russia so they can stop that war. Just cut it dead in its tracks. Like, so I think that he made the switch, but not soon enough.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, that was kind of like there's a way to answer that without having to say directly that we're going to keep funding Ukraine until we keep being $1 billion
at a time when it is in crisis. I think it is wrong. We can't do that.
We will not cut transfers for healthcare. We will not cut healthcare spending, full stop.
But
we'll
Mr.
have
Carney,
a detail, if I may.
Who do we believe, Mr. Carney, today, or the one he spoke on Rosemary Barton's show on February 16th,
I did not,
the one that repeated again that he would cut spending? Who do we believe?
If I may, consistently said we'll preserve all transfers to the provinces, including the increases. We will preserve all the transfers to individuals, I won't detail them all, but they're. So we're looking at addressing an operational spend, which is about $150 billion. We will address that. We will make it more efficient, and we will do it in 3 years, and we'll balance that budget.
Mr. Blanchet.
I am 6 minutes behind Mr. Carney.
We've heard that one before.
Longer. First, I will support any initiative which will bring Canada aligned with Europe and NATO in order to be stronger and facing new threats.
Thank you.
I believe that 2% won't be enough. I'm not more in favor of war than anybody else, but we have responsibilities, and our main ally is removing himself from the stage. So we have to step up. We have to do our part. I want to go somewhere else entirely. However, I want to ask Mr. Carney, if we're speaking about leadership here, if Quebec and Canada were to say, you are not being given a majority government, there will be more conservatives than you would like, maybe more New Democrats than you would like, and more people from the bloc than you would like. Will you accept, because you don't seem to be very eager about that, to deal with people which basically are more experienced than you are, as legitimate as you are, and would be more representative altogether than you would be being alone in your little kingdom? And also to propose to you all guys that 1 week after the election, we all meet, whatever the result, and we start dealing with this crisis together, because this is what people, either they are from Alberta or Quebec or wherever, this is what people expect from us.
Mr. Carney, is that something you could get behind?
I look forward to meeting with everyone. You're welcome to come, Steve, if you'd like. Week after place, but also, but in all seriousness,
you know my CBC paid guy.
I'm coming. On peut jaser un peu. Okay, I come to the core.
On jase.
Yeah, okay, I'll come to the core. Look, in a crisis, yes, you need a team, and you need to bring the country along with you. So what I did in the first week was to bring the premiers together, meet with all the Indigenous leaders, and move forward in that context. Now the question is, who's going to lead out of this?
Nobody can
whoever
accuse
leads out of this, if I may,
the Conservatives
Mr.
of repeating the same thing.
Thank you.
That is what
Whoever's going to lead out of
this whole debate
is going to need to work with all the provinces, work with Labour, work with Indigenous leaders, work with all Canadians to bring them forward in a united front. And if I'll make this last point, one of the things that has happened, which is a credit to those people at home, is that Canadians are coming together. And it's our responsibility to meet the strength of Canadian unity.
Still lagging. I have one small point to make. Yep. You will be elected, if you are elected, in the parliament where there are other leaders. I don't know if he called you, or Mr. Poilievre, I don't know if he called you, but before yesterday, you have not spoken to me once, even if I proposed it so many times. But you say, I speak to provinces' leaders. You're not elected in provinces. You are in the parliament where people are to make decisions which might not always suit you. But this is democracy, which you don't know too much about.
I'm going to jump in here because I'm noticing what the clock is saying, and you brought up Gaza earlier, and I think our audience would be interested in hearing your views on the other major international crisis.
It's going to get messy.
I just want to get this, before we get that, just to finish up on healthcare, I just want to speak to healthcare workers right now.
Oh, no,
don't care.
Don't want to.
You're done.
I'm a healthcare worker. Don't want to hear it.
That's what I don't give a crap. Yeah, but the Gaza stuff is going to be wild. It's going to get real messy, especially with the stuff with UNRWA, because I know it got messy yesterday with the French debate about it.
Exactly.
It's going to be wild.
To defend our healthcare,
I think your supporters would really like to hear what you have to say about this question, and we have less than 5 minutes for it here. What role should Canada play in the other major international crisis in this world, in the Middle East and the war in Gaza? Pierre Poilievre, would you start us off on that? What role can Canada play?
Well, first of all, we must condemn Hamas, and more importantly, the terror sponsors in Tehran who initiated the attacks, the horrific attacks of October 7th. We need to defeat the terrorists so that all the peoples of the world can live in peace and defend the right of, yes, Palestinians to have their own lives free from the oppression of Hamas dictators and Iranian intervention, while Israel has the ability to live in freedom and peace. But I also want to say we need to get back to the Canadian tradition, which is that when people come to this country, they leave foreign conflicts behind. The rampaging riots targeting Jewish communities is utterly unacceptable, and it points to the growing chaos that we see on our streets after 10 years of incredibly irresponsible liberal policies of weak borders, of dividing people into groups, of saying one thing to one group and the opposite to another, dividing and conquering. We must end that division and unite our people so that everyone feels safe, and that when we come here, we put our foreign conflicts behind and we put Canada first.
Mr. Singh, come from countries from around the world, and they care deeply about where they come from, and they should be able to do so. That's a part of being in our country, to have that freedom. Your treatment of Palestinians has been frankly disgusting. Your treatment of care and service of people in Gaza has been disgusting. On top of that, people in Israel and in Palestine deserve to live in peace and security. And Mr. Carney, to date, you've not acknowledged that what's going on in Gaza is now clearly become a genocide. It's important to call things out as they are, and you've not done that.
Mr. Carney.
We need to work, to go to your question, we need to work with our international partners, maximum pressure, maximum encouragement for an immediate ceasefire. That's the first thing. Encourage the return of all of the hostages. Resumption of humanitarian aid. My government put in place $100 million of humanitarian aid, which is ready to go. With respect to where this ultimately goes, yes, two-state solution, but it has to be a viable and free Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with the State of Israel. I will underscore one other thing. Mr. Poilievre rightly mentioned Iran. The Iranian sponsors in this region, we have to be clear-eyed about the fundamental risks of Iran and do everything with our international partners to check it and turn it.
Mr. Blanchet.
If we are to work together, we will have to be consistent.
Weird.
The Jewish community in Quebec and Canada is harassed by a very little minority of radical Islamists. And we don't do so much. The law in Canada says that somebody may invite people to be violent, to propose genocide against another people if they can be hidden behind a religious motivation. They are in agreement with that, they are in agreement with that, they are in agreement with that. And we say it is a crime to invite people to violence and killing other people. And this is what is being done very often in Canada and Quebec with the approval of the Criminal Code of Canada. And we are saying this has to be changed. We have to change what we do before we want people elsewhere to change what they do.
Last minute in the segment, Mr. Poilievre.
This is about crises and leadership.
Kind of.
And one crisis we have is in immigration. Because of this Liberal government's commitment to a radical policy called the Century Initiative, which seeks to bring our population up to 100 million people, they have allowed massive overcrowding in our communities. That has caused housing shortages, job shortages,
Don't blame immigration
and
for the fault of your government.
And if I could,
the fact that you did not
I didn't
invest in
interrupt
housing,
you. I did not interrupt you,
six homes,
sir. I did not
that's
interrupt you.
Shut up.
I do not blame.
Your
failures.
Let him finish.
I do not blame immigrants. I blame the Liberal government, which brought this policy on. And Mr. Carney wants to continue with the Century Initiative. This is crazy. We have to get back to normal levels of immigration, get rid of the fraud in the temporary immigration system, and ensure that the people who come here can arrive in numbers that we can house, employ, and care for. That's how it always was, and that's how we're going to restore
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. That is our time for this segment. Those are our 5 themes, but we are not done yet. We are entering.
Wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more.
Tonight, what we're calling the leader's choice, something a little bit different.
Okay.
Each of you will get the chance to ask a question, any question, of any other leader.
Please,
You
China.
can then debate
China.
the answer,
Please. Please,
and
please.
each one will last for 3 minutes. So, Mr. Singh, you have the first option here. Who do you want to ask your question of?
Mr. Carney.
Go for it.
Mr. Carney, as chair of Brookfield Investments, your company is one of the biggest tax dodgers in Canada.
Okay.
As
Okay,
chair,
good.
you approved decisions where Brookfield Investments bought up affordable homes, kicked out the tenants, and jacked up the rates. As Prime Minister, one of the first things you did was a tax cut that helped out mostly millionaires. And you have a plan to cut services for people. Now, I expect that of Mr. Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. That's very much a Conservative plan. But my concern is that doesn't sound like what people want for a Liberal leader. So my question to you is, Mr. Carney, whose side are you really on?
Thank you very much for that question, Mr. Singh. I'm on the side of Canadians. I'm in this for Canadians. I work for Canadians.
Way to phrase that.
But your track record doesn't show that, though.
No, I have a track record of public service for this country. Go back to something Mr. Blanchet referenced earlier, which is have I resolved any crises? We're in Quebec. If you ask anyone in the finance industry, if you ask anyone in government in Quebec in 2008, they'll know that I resolved the biggest crisis.
You did nothing.
You'll do that?
In Quebec, yeah.
You want to have fun?
But
60 million.
But I'm
This
in
is for
fairness
these two only.
with Mr.
This is for
Singh.
these two.
Mr. Singh. Yes, I have had a long career in the private sector. I'm proud of that career. I've always acted with integrity, and it brings me with experience that I can apply in this moment of crisis.
And you certainly have served.
Shut up, Singh.
But the
You know what? I'm
problem is
okay with
who you
that.
serve. You've served
No.
to
In
this case, I'm okay
benefit
with
those
this.
at the very top. You jacked up the price of
want more
homes for
Brookfield.
people living in affordable homes as a strategic decision. You dodged taxes. And then your decisions as Prime Minister show you're not prioritizing people, but you're prioritizing big business, billionaires.
So what have we done as a government directly? So we've gone directly to workers using all of our proceeds from the tariffs, committing all of them for workers, the workers most affected in industries.
The employment insurance isn't
unlike others, unlike others who plan to use them to cut taxes. We are focused on
the EI is not high enough, though. You have to accept that. Right now,
there will be additional programs. I am fully confident that the next government, whatever government is formed, or certainly if I'm in the next government, we will make additional programs.
But you didn't do that so far, though.
Well, I can't. You couldn't. Well, you couldn't, given that we're in an election process.
You could have increased the amount, though.
May I make a core point here, if I may, which is that when you think about workers here today and people watching at home, particularly younger people, there is an enormous opportunity in the trades, in the skilled trades. We are going to build this country in a way that has not been seen before. We are literally talking about hundreds of thousands, not jobs, but careers in the trade. And that's why we're investing in apprenticeships and mid-career.
But I think people are worried, Mr. Carney, if New Democrats aren't there to force Liberals to make sure they remember about people they will forget.
Gentlemen, that is time. Thank you for that. Monsieur Blanchet, you have the next question. To whom would you like to put it?
Mr. Carney, you avoided quite... I would say skillfully, the questions of Mr. Singh. But first, let me correct something. In 2008, not so much by your decision, $10 billion were given to car industry in Ontario, while 60 millions, not billions of dollars, were lent to lumberwood throughout the whole of Canada. I don't believe that's the right way to manage a crisis, since you did not recoup the money from the car industry. Then, you have been the manager of Brookfield. It's supposed to be a green investment fund, but we now know that 50% of the investments of Brookfield is in fossil fuel. It's not so green. You seem to want to support oil and gas industry. That's interesting. You want to support prefab housing, and it's also in the investments of Brookfield, but not in Canada. You want to support nuclear power, smaller reactors, which are more dangerous, by the way, and Brookfield has investments in Westinghouse. You have hidden the money of Brookfield in Bermuda and Cayman Island, $30 billion. Billions of dollars lost for Canada. You are having your taxes being paid by families, workers, elders in Canada and Quebec instead of paying your own taxes. So I want to know, will you, before the election, reveal all the details of your assets, as Mr. Singh has done, as Mr. Poilievre has done, and as I have done? We have a right to know under those circumstances.
Let's let him answer.
Well, the first thing is, I want to say a word about, I'll say a word about Brookfield. You know, this is a Canadian success story. It is the largest infrastructure investor and developer in the world. It is one of the largest, if not the largest, developer of renewable power in the world.
Great.
And who benefits from
Fantastic.
that? That's Canadian pensioners. That's Quebec pensioners. That is teachers. That is firefighters. It is a series of people, including individuals on this stage, benefit from that. Now, always acted with integrity, served the shareholders of Brookfield when I was there. I have left that. I have followed all the rules well in advance.
So
I have followed all the rules well in advance.
Let's reveal your assets like we all did.
And working for the people of Canada.
What do you own? Why don't you tell Canadians and Quebecers what you own?
Monsieur Blanchet, we're moving on to Mr. Poilievre now, who has his opportunity to ask the question of whomever he'd like here. And that will be...
Yeah, please.
Mr. Carney, but if I could begin by setting the stage. The choice in this election is, after a lost Liberal decade of rising cost and crime and a falling economy under America's thumb, do we want to elect them to a fourth term? Or do we want to change? Change so that you can afford food and homes. Change so that you can be safe on your street, and change so that your paycheck grows faster than your cost of living. Change with a new Conservative government. Because Mr. Carney is not change. Mr. Carney, in 2020, it was recorded, you began advising Justin Trudeau. It's on the Liberal Party website today that you are Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. They might want to update your website on that. On June 3rd of 2021, you said that inflation would be a sign of economic progress. And you advised governments, including Justin Trudeau's, your Liberal government, to print money, which led to the worst inflation crisis in a generation. Now, that means that mothers went to bed with empty fridges and empty bank accounts, worried how they'd feed their kids, that seniors worried they'd be evicted from their homes, that young people believed they'd never be able to own a home in the first place. Now, in retrospect, that you look back on the Liberal decisions that you advised Justin Trudeau to take, will you look at the camera in the eye and apologize to the many people who suffered as a result of the inflationary policies that you advised Justin Trudeau to implement?
You know, I said earlier, but I'm going to say it again. I know you want to be running against Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau isn't here.
Are you denying you were his
here.
economic advisor?
I did not provide any of that advice. I did not provide any of that advice.
Are you accusing your Liberal Party of lying about your role? Because it says today you can go to the Liberal Party website now, and it says that you were Justin Trudeau's economic advisor.
The way you judge someone, in my view, is how they act, what they do when they have responsibility. Twice I was a central bank governor. And in both cases, if I may, in both cases when I was responsible for inflation, inflation was less than 2%. I'll add that when I was here responsible for the Bank of Canada, inflation was less than 2%. Our dollar was at parity. That is the kind of success that I can deliver for this country coming out of this crisis. And what is at stake here?
You were the economic advisor to Justin Trudeau that gave us the worst inflation that we have had in a generation, because the policies that you implemented and those of the MPs that are still in your ministry.
To the
fellow Canadians,
crisis which
the last 10 years has been about the Liberals. The next 10 years should be about you.
And that's time.
Okay. That turned around.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to go south real quick.
Well, I'm going to ask myself a question.
That's fair.
That's good. I like that.
Ask a question which has been troubling me, and it's troubling me because, you know, we are in a very dangerous and divided world.
Who is it to?
I'm going to ask a question of Mr. Poilievre.
Okay.
I thought he was going to ask it to himself. To avoid any talking to anybody.
We talked earlier about the challenges in the Middle East, the threats from Iran, threats from Russia, Russia's aggression in Ukraine. We have the threats from China, which I raised. We have the United States, which is fundamentally changing its security relationships, its commercial relationships. We have all this. And in the context of that, everyone on this stage, Mr. Blanchet, Mr. Singh, myself, we have our top secret security clearance. We have our top secret security clearance. I got mine within 3 weeks. It wasn't hard, but I felt it was important that I had it so I could be in a position to be informed about that dangerous world and take decisions at. And Mr. Poilievre, it is now 950 days, if my numbers are right, since you've had the opportunity to get your top secret security clearance.
This is the opportunity to bring in China.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, first of all, I have got my security clearance when I was a minister. I got top secret clearance at the time, so there's no problem getting that. But when the government made this recent offer, they said that if I got the secret security clearance briefings, that I would be gagged under the security law, and I could be prosecuted if I spoke freely about matters of foreign interference. Now, given that Canada has experienced Chinese interference by Beijing, the government of China, in 2 consecutive elections, I needed to do my job to speak freely without fear of prosecution. And that was not something I would be allowed to do. Even Thomas Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, said that when he was the leader of the opposition, he never would have accepted the kind of gag order that your government and Mr. Trudeau's government was attempting to impose on me. And it's good that I'd made that decision, because it has allowed me to speak freely about things like the case where one of your candidates, sir, actually said that he wanted to send a political opponent to China under a bounty threatening his life or imprisonment, and you refused to get rid of him. Now, it might have something to do with the fact that you went to China not long ago to get a $250 million loan for your company.
Keep running the clock on him, too.
The reality is, you refused to stand up for a Canadian who was being threatened by a foreign government, and I was able to speak freely on that matter because I refused the gag order that the Liberal government attempted to impose on me.
Well, let's let him respond. I think people at home have seen a robust debate here, and it's been a robust campaign, and it has not stopped Mr. Blanchet or Mr. Singh at times during his campaign by making challenges with respect to these issues. So one can address it. I will observe, as someone with a top secret security clearance, that China is not the only country that is accused of foreign interference. And
gentlemen, that is time for the segment. That's our time. Now, closing statements.
That fell flat, Carney. Took too much time. That was brilliant.
Hit Q&As for each of you right now.
Oh, whoa.
Short questions, 45 seconds, please, on the answers. And we're going to go left to right as I look at you right now. Mr. Poilievre, you get the first question. To the best of my knowledge, you have not offered a hard timeline, as the other parties have, to meet Canada's NATO commitment of 2% spending on defense. When would you hit that target?
My aim will be to 2030. That said, when we renegotiate our trade deal with the U.S., I know it's their priority to see us increase our military budget. One of the things I will say to the Americans is the more free trade, tariff-free free trade we have, the faster we can rebuild our military in Canada and reassert our sovereignty. And we will use that money to have heavy icebreakers in the north, Poseidon aircraft, fighter jets, a new base in the north, double the Arctic Rangers, fill the vacancies in the armed forces, and rebuild the warrior spirit that characterized our military since the birth of our country. We will rebuild our forces, and we will stand behind our veterans.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre.
Well
Ms. Carney, your question.
done,
You
yeah.
have cut
Excellent.
both the
Well
consumer
done.
carbon tax and the capital gains tax increase that you inherited from your predecessor. Is that an admission that the Liberals made life less affordable for Canadians?
I think let me give you the rationale behind both of those changes. First, with respect to the consumer carbon tax, in effect, it'd become too divisive for Canadians. Canadians received rebates. On the whole, they received more than the tax actually was. But some had represented that it was a tax without a rebate. It became divisive. It didn't serve its purpose. It made a relatively modest contribution to overall climate goals. I got rid of it, first act, made Canadians whole. Secondly, but with respect to the capital gains tax, it's come up again, I'll be quick.
What a stupid statement.
This is a fundamental issue. We need to build this country. Builders, innovators, entrepreneurs need to be rewarded. That's why I brought it back.
And that's time. Thank you. Mr. Singh, would you change the existing cap on immigration?
I've said that the level of immigration, first of all, we need immigration. It's fundamentally important to our country.
Wasting my time. See ya. That was, what a wild way to end that one. That was perfect.
Yeah, because that's going to stick out. And I have to give it to this moderator for, throwing that question out there to Carney.
Yeah, that was good.
He floundered with that one.
Yeah.
He struggled.
Yeah.
So I liked it.
Dude, that was the ending. I was like, dang, talk about that recency bias. What a way to end.
Exactly.
That was, the only thing I didn't like is that Poilievre didn't drive it, but man, it fell into his lap and he reacted perfectly.
Yeah.
So.
That was a gift.
Yeah.
That really was a gift.
I was like, are we going to get through these debates without talking about Carney and China? And then boom. I was like, let's go.
Canadians, and make sure that we've got the right immigration levels.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. That's time. Mr. Blanchet, Quebec, I believe, is now the only province with a carbon tax. Do you think that's fair?
What Quebec has is a system by which we invite big emission companies. I don't know how to translate that.
Hide behind the language things. Come on,
man. If they do not, then they have to pay. It goes into a fund which is invested then in reducing emissions. Our partner is California, which makes this a huge deal about reducing emissions. This is what we do. This is to be compared to what Europe does. And by the way, Europe would impose tariffs on Canadian oil if it ever got there. We're quite proud of that. And we have to be responsible.
Don't let me forget about the pipeline.
This is much less expensive than doing nothing to fight climate change.
Next time, we're going to do another set of quick hits here.
Oh,
left to right
okay.
again. And 30 seconds this time. Monsieur Poilievre, you've previously promised to defund the CBC as one of your very first acts as Prime Minister. Is that still the plan?
Yes, CBC will continue to operate as a self-funded, Canadian-owned and controlled non-for-profit that raises money like other media organizations through sponsorships, subscriptions, advertising, licensing fees, and countless other things that will ensure Canadians who still want to listen and view its content will be able to do so. And at the same time, we'll allow freedom of the press so that everybody has their voice heard and they can make their own decisions.
Thank you, Mr.
Well
Carney.
done.
Next
Easy.
question to
Well
you,
done.
30 seconds. Would you remove some of Canada's legal tax avoidance loopholes that companies that you have worked for have used?
Look, I think that what we need to do is undertake a comprehensive review of our corporate tax system and do that on the basis of the right principles. We've got to have fairness, transparency, sustainability, and competitiveness. So we need a tax system, a corporate tax system, including being part of a international minimum corporate tax through the OECD.
And that is time. Mr. Singh, the question for you is, if you hold the balance of power after this election is over, what would your price be to support another party?
We've laid out our priorities. We want to make sure we bring down the cost of groceries, build homes that people can afford. I can also tell you that we would defend CBC, unlike Mr. Poilievre, who wants to cut it.
Never mind. I don't
and
want
we
to hear
would.
it.
It was funny.
I changed my mind.
I just got to shout out was one jabroni who's Norm Enon saying, stop your useless talking during the debate. And how many beers have you guys had today? Well, here's the thing, folks. Go to CBC and watch if you don't want any interruptions. This is a live stream with people who are doing commentary. Surprise. Welcome to how YouTube works. Bye-bye.
Also, sparkling water.
Yeah, for goodness sakes.
Your support.
Respect for Quebec. That's quite easy. I don't want to go against what Canada wants to do for itself, but I don't want Canada to impose an economic vision or a multiculturalist vision on Quebec, which is different in terms of language and values and secularity and equality between people. So I want to be a partner, and if Quebec is respected, Canada has nothing to fear from the Bloc because we vote for what is good for Quebec. It only has to be good for Quebec.
Thank you, Monsieur Blanchet. Now, we have one last question for each of you. We'll go right to left this time as I look at you. Bit of an offbeat question. Mr. Blanchet, what is your biggest regret during this campaign?
What a question.
Good question. I'm not very fond of regrets, I would say, but we should have started sooner to see that we had to create the environment for a deal in which Quebec and Canada would be, one bigger than the other, but partners to be stronger in front of Mr. Trump and showing that maybe nobody here is the partner to let go alone without being surveyed or controlled or supervised by a Quebec voice.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchet. Same question, Mr. Singh. Your biggest regret of this campaign?
Not being able to meet as many people as I would love to have. It's a short campaign, and so I can't get to as many communities
That's
as I
a
wanted
good answer to that question.
I think one of the honors of my job is to be able to meet people and to hear their stories, and then to take their stories and concerns and bring them to Ottawa and to fight for those people. And so I want you to know, even if I haven't made it to your community, I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that you're represented, that we never let any government cut our health care, that we defend the values that we care so deeply about. We make my life more affordable. That's my commitment to you. Even if I didn't get to see you, that's my commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Carney, same question. Biggest regret of the campaign?
To be honest, it's the same answer. This is an astonishing country. It is an amazing country. And
you set the timeline.
The opportunity
like you
and the
decided that.
responsibility that comes with it.
Oh, dang it.
Of being
Plagiarizing.
Yeah.
Hearing their stories,
Again.
their challenges, drawing strength and ideas from them, and working to be part of the solution is the greatest honor of my life. But the regret is that it is also a big country, and it is a short period of time.
Mr. Poilievre, last word to you.
I actually agree with these two gentlemen. I had a rule that at all my rallies, even when they're really big, I would stand in front of a flag and greet every single person and hear their stories and learn their struggles. And that was always touching to me, that they would put their faith in me or in any of us.
Yeah.
But we've been in such a rush because we have to get off to the next event, so we haven't been able to stop and do that. And I want you to know out there, I haven't forgot about you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Polyev.
Okay.
It is time now for closing statements, and prior to the debate, you drew lots as to which order we would go in. And
I would
Mr.
say
Singh,
that,
you get the first word
you
on
know,
a closing
we didn't
statement.
do this
Certainly,
sooner.
thank you.
Yeah.
Is what I would have
Because
said.
you voted for New Democrats, we were able to build this country that we love. Universal health care and pensions, because you voted for us.
Shut him up,
because
please.
You voted for New Democrats,
I don't want to hear him.
Closing statement. Yeah.
No.
It's, well, actually, in the meantime, I guess. Actually, I'm just going to do this. Hopefully, this doesn't kill the stream. Oh, it kind of did. Oh, no. All right, we're good. All right. Okay, wow, we have a lot of this. Well, after things are done, we'll catch up on all super chats. We have like 15 plus we got to catch up on.
Yeah.
We'll 100% get to those. And then as well as we will be covering the media questions afterwards as well. So we'll be talking, we'll be going to the super chats and waiting for them to get to the pulpits and talk to the media, which will be interesting.
He's still going. My God.
It's my closing statement.
Mr. Singh, Mr. Carty.
There we go.
We are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. Donald Trump is trying to fundamentally change the world economy, the trading system. But really what he's trying to do to Canada, he's trying to break us so the U.S. can own us. They want our land, they want our resources, they want our water, they want our country. And we're all going to stand up against Donald Trump. I'm ready. I've managed crises over the years. I've built strong economies. We will fight back with counter tariffs. We will protect our workers and those businesses, and we will build the strongest economy. We will build Canada strong. I'm asking for your support, the honor of doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Monsieur Blanchet.
For 260 years and a little bit more, les Français, devenus des Canadiens, devenus des Canadiens français, devenus des
I kind of don't even
Québécois.
want to listen to him either.
Oh, that's funny though.
he
says some goofy things, man.
All Canadians. But to no avail, we are different. So let's be economic partners. Let's have a voice chosen by
We
and for
are
Quebecers.
different.
And ally for
Okay,
Canadians
get off the
as
stage.
equals.
Carney
in front
has tried to
of
bring
Mr. Trump.
division to Canada.
Monsieur Poiliev.
And let me tell you how
Only
we're
in
different.
Canada
There you go.
could someone start where I began and get to this stage. I was born to a single mother and adopted by school teachers who raised me to believe in the incredible Canadian promise that anyone who worked hard could do anything. That promise feels broken today. Many of you worried about paying your bills, feeding your families, or ever even owning a home. You're worried your kids are in danger. But I'm here to say it doesn't have to be this way. With change, we can restore the Canadian promise so that hard work gets you a beautiful house on a safe street under a proud flag. We can do it with hope for a change.
Gentlemen, thank you for a very spirited debate tonight.
Well
two quick
done.
points before we go. Number one.
Oh, wait, what?
One of you celebrated your 60th birthday yesterday on this stage. Yves-François Blanchet, bon anniversaire.
He's 60? Yeah. He's looking good for 60. Great job,
The
man.
time of this debate because the Leafs already clinched the Atlantic Division title, and therefore we didn't need to move the debate to accommodate a hockey game. I'm getting back at my colleague who was in this position last night, and okay, go Habs, go. That's fine. With that, we're done. Thank you, leaders, for being here tonight.
Yeah, that was
We are
good.
just 11 days from Election Day,
Well
April
done.
28th, but there are many ways.
11 days
that you
out.
can
Yeah.
So we'll wait and see what happens there with, we'll keep an eye out for when those post interviews questions come in. We're going to hit our super chats here. So, holy smokes, we fell so far behind. Okay.
Yeah, no, I was trying to keep track of them.
Eric A. Skid Mark Carney. Holy smokes. No gun buybacks should stop at the border, which liberals would keep this turkey safe from hunting police. Lovely. All right, here we go. A Western 91 says, look through history. Oh, we talked that one. Okay, I know where we're at now. Jay Rossetti, thank you guys. Montreal Boomers, let's go. Travi 10-4, the NDP is a joke. Jagmeet Singh is unprofessional AF. Travi 10-4 also said, that was a loaded question for Pierre. If they said no, they would have painted him some evil guy, which was, I think, of the Ukraine.
Yeah,
question.
it was. Yep.
Nancy Copeland, I'm so down with Pierre. He Neocon, obviously. Oh, so I'm done with Pierre. He's a neocon, obviously. Interesting. Must be PPC voters. Fair enough. Travi104 says bonus round, aka premeditated shot at Pierre Poilievre, which I don't think that ended up happening.
I don't think it was. I think
all Mark Carney.
It was all Mark Carney, and that's it.
Yeah.
So
that's fascinating. I like turtles. Says good response from Pierre. I'm calling it. I just bet Carney's wife's boyfriend that Pierre are going to be next PM.
Oh my gosh, that was a hot take. There's a lot going on in that one.
Angus says, will you cover the media questions after? Yes. Travi104 is a 10 out of 10 best ending. And us until time. Eric A, thank you guys for a great watch party for these 2 debates last couple nights. I hope your channel keeps growing and growing. Keep up the great work from a proud Canadian veteran. Eric, we appreciate you. Thank you for the love. And Slow Chemical says, I can't believe Carney brought up China. He gifted Pierre an absolute kill shot. And he didn't even bring up China. He brought up Pierre security clearance, which opened up the door for Pierre to be like, yeah, so here's what actually happened with that.
Yeah.
Boom. So that was
like
wild.
The whole time I was like, I can't believe that Pierre is not going to talk about China. And the fact that, you know, the Liberal Party and Carney in particular is so deeply embedded in that. And to not talk about that, I was like, that is such a miss. Mm-hmm. And so to have that come back at the end, that was fun. I don't think he could have scripted that better. That was great.
Yeah, that was like the perfect. I was really happy that happened. And that was big good way to end. Mm-hmm. And because that was the thing, it didn't need to be a segment. It was just, here's my 45 seconds. Boom. Brought Montclair in, the NDP. This is how we do it. How you doing? Keep it moving. What's up? You know? And I was like, thank goodness.
Also, the way that ended too, where he was like, you know, with hope for a change, it was like, oh my God, take my money. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, excellent. Well done.
Yeah, so. It's HJ says, your live stream was the best. Made this debate more enjoyable to watch. Thanks, guys, for what you do. Hey, appreciate it. We appreciate it. They're saying leader scrum was canceled due to security threat. Kearney got someone to shut that down after that performance. We'll see. I haven't heard that. I'll keep an eye on X. Second person said it. Post leaders debate scrums are canceled due to security concerns, apparently. Wow. If that's real. Snakes. That's how they got out of it. That's how they got out of it. Stefan Landry says, good work, guys. Hope is the message for us young people. Yes, you're dang straight. Stefan. I'm hoping I'm not screwing that up completely. So there's going to be no questions.
That's interesting. I'd be curious to kind of hear from the chat what your thoughts were on a lot of this, because my take was that Blanchette really dominated that debate. And I was really kind of feeling like Pierre wasn't really showing up a lot in the debate. I just felt like
your girl.
He just wasn't. Oh yeah. So she was a professor of mine, and I really, really have a lot of respect for her. So, shout out Dalhousie University.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
But basically, I felt that Pierre was a little bit flat in the beginning of that debate. I was really glad to see him come back at the end and really kind of nail that. There was a couple of moments where I was like, oh, that was really good. I think that we're seeing a softer side of Pierre to try and combat a lot of that negative rhetoric about, you know, he's just, you know, the worst, and he's so aggressive and he's mean and nasty and all that.
He's a bad boy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's what you're seeing right now is him trying to show a softer, kinder side. And at the beginning of the debate, I don't know if I really loved it. But then for the end of the debate, I thought that was the perfect way, because it felt like a scolding almost. Like, listen, you're going to tell me that about my security clearance. Look at your security clearance and how badly you've acted. And then at the end of it, bring the hope back. Mm-hmm. Well done.
And the second last thing he said when he looked at the camera says, thank you for trusting me, which I was like, that's going to connect and land well. Cold Paw Northern says, Pierre's the point man, always stays on point. Yeah, for better, for worse.
Yeah,
that's the truth.
That is the truth, honestly. And I think that in some ways that's a really strong quality, and in some ways, in some instances, it's not a good quality. Yeah. So it has its negatives and benefits depending on what part of the debate. And I think at the beginning of the debate, I don't think it was a positive, but at the very end, when he brought it all back again to kind of tie it all together nicely, almost like a movie or a poem or a song, I was just like, oh, it felt good when you heard it.
Absolutely. And that was probably, people are saying they canceled. I don't want to believe that they canceled him, but they likely did if multiple people are saying it at this point. But if they cancel these post-interview debates or questions, that just shows you how scummy the system is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we can't get around it. Oh, we can't let them ask questions in English. It won't land too well with the public. Rebel News is so scary.
Isn't that wild? I think that I've said many times that I'm not a big Rebel News fan. Like it's just not my source of news. But the fact is they perform a critical function in our society where, they have to be there to represent that demographic of people that enjoy their content. And if you shut them out, then you live under a state that is not actually free. And so regardless of whether I like them or not, the fact is they should be at that event and they should be asking questions and they should be poking in areas where people don't want to be poked because they know that they have something to hide. So I appreciate the work that they do. Like I said, it's not generally my flavor, but I appreciate their role and the fact that this government would basically say, we don't want them here. They ask the questions that we don't want to ask. I think that's very interesting.
Well, it goes back to my segment from this afternoon where that was the issue. It wasn't like they were asking questions that were just so out of nowhere. It was just questions that made the leaders uncomfortable. That was it.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like they were just like, they made something up off the top of their head. Oh, what do you think, son? What do you think about aliens that just landed 2 days ago? Like, what? They weren't even asking that. And Nylock coming with some interesting questions or thoughts that he wants to look into. He's like, I just picked up my voter card and read the guide it came with. It says you don't require actual ID to vote and doesn't say provide citizenship.
That's true.
Is it?
So basically what happened was when the Conservative government was in power, they put forward, I don't know if it was the Fair Election Act. I'm trying to remember, or maybe it's the Electoral Reform Act. I think it was. I think the Fair Election Act was Trudeau afterwards. So basically what happened was Conservatives came in and said, you need to have proof of who you are. And we can't do this vouching thing where, I brought my friend Steve and Steve is totally Canadian, wink, wink, wink. Let's vote. And so they actually removed that and said, no, you have to vote in your riding. You have to vote with your ID. You have to prove who you are. And then the Trudeau government came in, they said, that's not really fair. We need to change this. And so they created the Fair Elections Act and basically removed that requirement so that you can have somebody vouch for you. And if you've got a voter card, then that's good enough. And so that's kind of the thing. And it's almost like any form of ID is going to be good enough that they can write down. And we know how easy it is to fake a license or fake anything. So I think it's like a piece of mail, even with your name on it and an address. Like, it doesn't feel good, right?
Right. So there's no real proof of citizenship that you're like, even so much as even a passport holder.
Right. So
like, show your passport.
Right. And so I have friends and family who've actually worked elections and they're like, we have somebody who can come in and say that they're another person and we can't really turn them away because that's not how it works in Canada anymore.
Right. Fascinating. Well, that's a bit of a bummer, man. I didn't know about that. So, sorry, you keep talking. I'm just trying to find.
One of the things I wanted to kind of address that was in the chat, people saying, Blanchette roasted Carney. I don't know why Jagmeet is even there. Pierre cleared up his security clearance for the public. Agreed. I don't know why Blanchette or Jagmeet were even there. I think that I'm glad that Blanchette was there in the sense that I feel like Blanchette is the person we wish was a part of the Conservative Party, honestly.
Yeah.
Because if he cared as much about Canada as he does about Quebec, I think we'd all be in a better state.
Right.
Quite frankly. And I think that what saddens me is the fact that we accept this ideology that Quebec is somehow a separate entity from Canada, but yet, willingly give them billions of dollars worth of transfer payments. So it's like, you're either with us or you're not with us. You need to make up your mind. And Quebec voters did make up their mind. They said, no, we're with Canada. So I think that Blanchette is unnecessarily divisive. And I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
But I think that if you had him on your team, holy crap, like he would be he'd be a wild person to have on your team.
Yeah, we'll need to specify a couple things here. So we have Laura Baker says you need a legit piece of ID with your picture and 2 pieces of ID with your address. Yes, we said that. What we're saying is you don't necessarily need to be a Canadian passport holder to have those things. And that's what we're kind of getting at here.
Yeah. And there is the vouching is the part of it too, right? So you can vouch for this person and say that they are who they say they are. So that's the problem.
Yeah. Holy jumping. What a time. I am Blue Sky Strategy Group. There you go. I'm still stunned about, I gotta hit up X here. Cause I'm having a hard time. Jasmine Lane, man.
Oh, what's she saying?
All caps. I can't believe Carney asked about Polyev security clearance. It's 10 exclamation marks. He just owned himself. What a fail. Wow. That was pretty much a YouTube title. That's that's my title for tomorrow's episode show right there.
Yeah. What a fail.
Owned. Got him.
And it's funny because I've had people talk about that to me. They're like, why do you guys have the most outrageous titles on your videos? It's like, we have to.
Yeah.
We have to. And they're like, well, the title's outrageous. The clip is wild. Sometimes there's explosions or whatever. And I'm like, I don't think there's explosions on ours.
There's never been an explosion.
That was mine. I was like, I don't think that's the case. And so, but the titles are definitely inflammatory because of the YouTube algorithm. You have to put it that way. And there's been a whole formula that's been worked out. We talked to other creators. They're doing it too because and everybody hates it, quite frankly, because you're like, I hate this, but this is the only way for the news to get out. So you have to kind of abide by the algorithm gods in order to put things out there so that people will be able to see it.
There it is. We're going to get this up. Yep. So there you go. CP24 post leaders debate scrums canceled due to security concerns. Absolute BS. That's so
security concerns from whom?
Yeah, I'm curious. Who's feeling unsafe these days? Oh shoot. Yeah. I'm gonna bring that back here because I need to do this. But yeah, well, that just means I get to start my process and get the tomorrow morning's episode getting started. So you guys are incredibly awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on these debates. I really didn't expect to be here with you guys.
Yeah.
At this point,
I know, right?
You to do this on your own.
I was like, okay, I'm live streaming it from my sad computer in my office.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm hoping this weekend is the weekend this all goes down for me, and I will officially be a father. But we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I will also say that I did just get my new Mac Mini today. It finally arrived.
Nice.
So
we don't have the computer that's set on fire every time you try to do a live stream.
Yeah. So when we have a live stream, it won't look like dog crap anymore. So
we love to see it, man. That's great. Yeah, you guys are awesome. And Jody Mack says, thanks for doing this. Elevate, another great show. We appreciate it. As we said, the scrum questions are canceled. Whoa, it's okay because Polyev lit Carney up. It's good enough.
You know what? And that's the thing is that I don't think they could have ended that any better. They finished right on Polyev and they finished with hope. I'm like, you know what? Okay. The other questions, I kind of wanted to see them. Like I'm curious to see what they would have asked and what they would have answered. But I'm okay with that being the ending. I feel like the worst thing you can do is extend a show too far into another season, and you're like, oh, I don't even care about these characters anymore.
Well, it's almost like the questions last night served a purpose for the Quebec or for the French debates because the debate was lackluster.
Yeah,
this one actually had some meat to it at the end, and it was like, you know what? As much as it's stupid, and we know that it's ridiculously controversial that they had a security concern to cancel the scrum, I can live with it. Because the way Polyev ended that was nice, beautiful, and I'm sure you people are awesome too. We love to see it. Well, anyways, I think Reg needs to get home. I need to start recording for tomorrow morning. But whatever it is you're doing, whether you be going to work,
stopping for some Dairy Queen on your way home.
Oh, gee,
that's what I'm doing.
He's hitting the blizzard. Let's go. You guys are awesome. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.